Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Although the dark underground cavity cannot be directly observed with vision, but the impact of destruction is as dazzling as a strong light. Chen Ming must first find a way to break through the destruction zone created by the destruction core, and then he can deal with the laboratory that is constrained by the position in this underground cavity area. To pass through this circle of destruction zone, he can either use high-intensity psychic special materials to resist the impact of destruction fluctuations like the mechanical race did and force a breakthrough, or he can directly see through the essence of the mechanical race's approach and use pure psychic fluctuations to offset the destruction fluctuations. The second method seems to be in line with the style of psychics. But from Chen Ming's current point of view, the mechanical race is definitely using some technical means to stimulate the effect of the destruction core and construct this circle of area. It is definitely not a rational approach to use one's own power to compete with the antimatter reactor and antimatter engine. And the first method, although the special level materials themselves are still quite rare. However, since Chen Ming began to let the Zerg participate in the development of resources on the road of development, the development of special resources is no longer as difficult as before. The Zerg he left behind on different planets where resources were discovered could breed efficiently, and of course they could also mine the resources on them. Therefore, Chen Ming's resource inventory has increased recently. Moreover, the materials that Chen Ming had developed and manufactured and used for the biopowered armor some time ago were also changing with the changes in the inventory of materials and the evolution of the Zerg. The biopowered armor has always used top-notch special materials with psychic properties. In other words, the method Chen Ming should choose now is actually the first one, rushing in directly. Of course, Chen Ming is not so reckless. He continued to use his powerful perception ability to confirm the internal environment structure of the laboratory. Soon, Chen Ming ended the reconnaissance phase and thought about the steps to take after entering the laboratory in his mind. He wrapped the psychic fluctuations around the inside of the armor to make up for the possible loopholes in the armor itself, and the psychic energy of the Queen of Insects also acted on him. His body burst out with powerful strength and speed, breaking out of the ground from the stratum, rushing into the area covered by destruction, and rushing to the laboratory of the mechanical race. The destructive psychic energy acted on the armor covering Chen Ming, reacting with the psychic properties of the armor material and constantly destroying the armor structure. The destructive psychic energy would make Chen Ming's repair psychic energy ineffective, but Chen Ming could still manually control the materials to fill the damaged parts of the armor to offset the impact of the destruction. The distance between the edge of the underground hole and the outer layer of the internal laboratory, that is, the width of the destruction zone, was not long. With sufficient protection, Chen Ming relied on the powerful biological power armor to forcefully break through the destruction zone in just a moment. He smashed the wall of the laboratory with a punch and entered the interior of the laboratory. Although the process just now caused pits and pits on his biological armor, it also caused various conditions in which the psychic properties of some armor structures that were not damaged by destruction were erased. But all the damage was restored as soon as Chen Ming left the destruction zone. In the laboratory, the alarm sounded. But there were no mechanical units on both sides of the pure white corridor where Chen Ming was at this time. After all, the destruction zone is much stronger than the mechanical units. If someone can break through the destruction zone, then there is no point in using ordinary mechanicals to stop them. Several simple defense systems inside the laboratory started automatically, but they were immediately shut down after Chen Ming reached out to control the laboratory. However, he soon discovered that the laboratory was the laboratory, and the room inside the laboratory with the destruction core was the device, which was an independent structure. He could not control it directly through the laboratory, but the problem was not big. Since his main body came here, he planned to take the initiative to take risks. Chen Ming stayed there for a while, wanting to see if the mechanical family had any further big moves. But he did not encounter anything, as if the mechanical family did not intend to stop him and let Chen Ming enter the laboratory and approach the device. This situation made Chen Ming feel a little wrong, and he increased his vigilance in his heart and paid more attention to his ability to perceive danger. But now there is a small problem. His consciousness has almost been completely covered by the sense of danger brought by the destruction core. There is no way. After all, the power of the destruction core is the most terrifying. He can only pay more attention to other dangers that are covered by the danger of destruction. Under the dual effects of Chen Ming's perception and psychic power, Chen Ming opened a fast passage inside the laboratory between him and his target, the device with the destruction core installed. It allowed him to reach the core area of the laboratory at the fastest speed. Chen Ming was not obstructed by the mechanical race on the way, or it was not so easy to have it. Not only did Chen Ming control the laboratory, but also because the outside of the laboratory was all destruction areas, Chen Ming needed a little effort to come in. Unless the mechanical race directly stopped the operation of the destruction core, they would have to face the same problem as Chen Ming. The mechanical race did not seem to have such an intention, so they had no way to interfere later. They let Chen Ming reach the center of the laboratory. The destruction core exuding a terrifying aura was just ahead. Before Chen Ming faced the impact of the destruction core, a large amount of silent alloy liquid suddenly appeared in front of him out of thin air, blocking him in front of him, forming two huge and heavy mechanical arms. Chen Ming did not hesitate at all, controlling one of the mechanical arms to touch the device in the center, and the other stretched directly to the destruction core. His intention was quite clear. However, the mechanical family, which had been silent for a long time, finally took action before Chen Ming was about to end it all. The device on the surface that Chen Ming thought was just for camouflage was suddenly activated, and a layer of psychic energy fluctuations that were visible to the naked eye and almost condensed to the essence penetrated all the substantial structures, forming a spherical barrier, which was blocking everything around. In a blink of an eye, the underground, including the entire destruction area, the laboratory inside, and Chen Ming in the laboratory were all covered. But just when this spherical barrier was about to be completely blocked, the last gap on its spherical surface was delayed in being completely blocked, and the efficiency of the psychic energy suddenly seemed to stagnate, but the equipment was running more violently than before. The device on the surface seemed to have reached the edge of overload in just a few seconds and was forced to open the shell of the device to dissipate heat. At the moment the device was opened, a spherical object emitting strong psychic fluctuations could be seen from the gap between the shells. This is also a psychic core, and Chen Ming has already felt its specific effect. At this time, Chen Ming, who was underground, felt a tearing sensation that rushed directly into the essence of the consciousness body at the moment the device on the surface was activated. He immediately understood that the ability of the device on the surface was exactly the same as that of the device underground, but it was disguised on the outside to make Chen Ming misjudge. Chen Ming mistakenly thought that the mechanical race was going to use the destruction core and the jump device to achieve a special effect. The real function of the device on the surface is to activate the internal psychic core related to consciousness and block all consciousness around consciousness. It is precisely because of its function that it conflicts with Chen Ming's consciousness. And Chen Ming's consciousness in the body is not complete and complete. His consciousness also exists in other places at the same time. This resulted in the device being unable to completely retaliate against Chen Ming's consciousness, so the operation of the device was stuck and overloaded. But the equipment prepared by the mechanical family was still trying its best to cut off the connection between his consciousness and other consciousnesses. If his consciousness was really cut off, the impact would be extremely negative. Although Chen Ming had been actively cutting his consciousness and throwing it into different bodies. But these cut consciousnesses were all connected to each other and were part of Chen Ming himself. Only in this way could each consciousness body call upon complete spiritual energy at will. If consciousness was cut, not only would the spiritual energy effect be limited, but it would also affect the structure of Chen Ming's consciousness body. For Chen Ming's current state, the consequences would be disastrous. Chen Ming really couldn't get rid of the device itself in a short time. He went straight to the real target, the core of destruction, at the beginning, and didn't touch the device on the surface that was obviously a trap. The mechanical family was very clever to set another trap in this trap on the surface, causing Chen Ming to not pay attention to it at all. The equipment on the surface was also powered by antimatter energy for a long time. It is obviously not a rational idea to use human consciousness to fight against the antimatter reactor. Although Chen Ming really wants to do this, his current condition does not allow him to do so. Because his consciousness is very special. His consciousness is like a ball of yarn. It is difficult to cut the ball of yarn in half directly. But when Chen Ming's consciousness body, this ball of yarn, has several threads extending to different places and forming smaller balls of yarn. It is much easier to cut off the connection between these small balls of yarn and the big ball of yarn. Chen Ming is now equivalent to using the connection between the yarn balls to compete with the energy of the antimatter reactor. There is no problem with a ball of yarn hitting a reactor, but it is better to think about it with a single thread. If Chen Ming does not want to cut off the connection between consciousness, either he concentrates all his consciousness on the body, or he lets the consciousness on the main body leave, or he lets the mechanical family's device really cut off his consciousness. The third option is directly ruled out. Chen Ming probably has a few seconds to consider what to do. In these few seconds, a large mechanical arm made of silent alloy by Chen Ming has already touched the device underground. However, this underground device also has problems. Its shell and internal structure are separated, and controlling the shell alone cannot directly control the entire device. In particular, the energy progress bar that Chen Ming saw on the shell before is also fake. This progress bar is purely for deception. No matter when Chen Ming sees it, it will be an approximate progress. This is a trick that takes advantage of people's psychology and disguises itself as a seemingly urgent thing with a progress bar, making Chen Ming think that he must stop it from working. It is a trap used to lure Chen Ming into the underground, so as to take advantage of this unprecedented opportunity to block Chen Ming's consciousness. The mechanical race really guessed that Chen Ming's body might not be the body, so they made such an arrangement. Even if Chen Ming might have other consciousnesses, at least the part of his consciousness that ran here must be destroyed here. Of course, Chen Ming was not surprised. He knew from the beginning to the end that this would definitely be a troublesome trap set by the mechanical race. But for the sake of the destruction core, he decided to step in, because he had really seen the power of destruction. The other mechanical arm was still struggling to approach the destruction core and could touch it soon. But Chen Ming also understood at this time that his mechanical arm would definitely not have time to touch the destruction core before the consciousness body was cut off. Not to mention that he was only touching the destruction core instead of controlling it. He had to make a decision. Chen Ming did not hesitate anymore, and a flash of blue and red flashed in his consciousness space. Then he suddenly gathered all the scattered consciousnesses and summarized them all on the body. At this moment, the boss, who was processing the latest documents, suddenly stopped, looked at the robot next to him, and then looked at the terminal sent by Chen Ming in the drawer, frowning. The robot controlled by Chen Ming in the headquarters suddenly stopped working, and the director of the Ship Research Institute and the director of the Psychic Research Institute, who were discussing the further development of phase ships and psychic energy at the meeting next to them, looked at it in confusion. Chen Ming's prosthesis, who was in the frontline command room, suddenly lowered his head as if he was asleep and said nothing. Qiu Bowen seemed to feel something, and his eyes were full of confusion and surprise when he turned his head to look at Chen Ming. He immediately came to Chen Ming's side and shook Chen Ming's shoulders and released his mental power to test it. He came to a conclusion that shocked him. ManhwaRecap and Chen Ming, are they half-brothers? This special situation immediately made him think of a special situation, the hive mind. Chen Ming certainly knew what problems would arise if he suddenly took all his consciousness back to his body. But the foreshadowing he had laid within ManhwaRecap's identity was enough. Only people would know that he had a mechanical hive network similar to ManhwaRecap's insect hive network. Even the structure of this mechanical hive thinking network was thought up by others, not by himself, in the eyes of the outside world. He had already considered the consequences, and now he should do what he wanted to do because he was willing to bear the consequences. Let's give it a try. See what the mechanical trap has prepared for him. Chen Ming completely gathered his consciousness, and at the moment when the consciousness blockade area was formed, he smashed the shell of the underground device with one fist and reached out to control the more core structure. But just as he smashed the shell, a sudden burst of danger attacked him. His arms sublimated directly and disappeared into the air. A group of dazzling matter made Chen Ming retreat dozens of meters immediately, and he constructed a steel wall in front of him that completely blocked the laboratory structure, and the thickness was also dozens of meters. He covered the charred gap of his broken arm and wiped off the armor material that had melted into molten iron due to the terrifying high temperature. He continued to look at the laboratory through perception. The other end of the laboratory had completely lost its basic structure, and only high heat and destruction remained. The material that suddenly appeared just now was the core material of the star in this galaxy. The device arranged by the mechanical family on the surface was not just a disguise. It really had its function and was really connected to the inside of the star. The mechanical family did not just intend to send destruction to the star. Their idea was to send the material inside the star here. They used the power of the star to destroy the destruction core, so that the destruction core would burst out all the power contained in it when it was destroyed. Destruction will destroy everything. The destruction core has been damaged by the power of the star. A wave of destruction that cannot be suppressed or restricted has begun to dissipate from the inside. The power of the star was also destroyed by the destruction while activating the destruction. Chen Ming did not think much about it and rebuilt his body and armor. He then continued to build a larger layer of silent alloy armor on the outer layer of the biological armor. He was like a solid iron block, passing through the copper wall and iron wall he made, and approached the location of the destruction core. Silent alloy can temporarily resist the influence of destruction, but the structure of the alloy was constantly destroyed as Chen Ming approached the destruction core. He had called out all the silent alloy stocks and used them all at the moment to completely wrap up the destruction core. The destruction core was like a source that was constantly spreading radiation, and Chen Ming was about to use heavy lead to limit it and then proceed with subsequent processing. However, at the moment when his silent alloy wrapped up the destruction core once again erupted with terrifying power, tearing apart the surrounding silent alloy and destroying everything around it. Chen Ming reacted extremely quickly and retreated again, once again creating a solid wall that was enough to make the destruction sigh. After this wave of destructive power ended, he quickly approached again and wrapped the destruction core again with the remaining silent alloy material. This time, Chen Ming deliberately left a hole in one direction to allow the destructive power to escape, and the destruction core also burst out with a force as before. This force went toward the ground in the direction arranged by Chen Ming, completely destroying the devices left by the mechanical race on the surface. The membrane that blocked Chen Ming's consciousness disappeared immediately. If Chen Ming wanted to leave, he could leave at any time. But he didn't want to. He had experience in controlling the black fog core and knew that this kind of psychic core was very close to the spirit stone in nature. He could try to use his own power to limit the destruction core in this area to restrain the energy that was escaping from the destruction. Even though the effect of the destruction was terrible, while Chen Ming used his mental power to suppress it, it also caused damage to Chen Ming's own mental power. Even Chen Ming's consciousness body had some scars on it. But Chen Ming still didn't give up. While suppressing the destruction core, which had not yet completely released its own power, he also let part of his consciousness disperse again to get help from other places. He used all the means he knew to increase his mental power and the effect of psychic energy. Whether it was the fairy tree, the spirit stone, the ship spirit, the condensed spiritual energy source, or the drugs and devices that stimulated mental power, he used all that could be used. But the destruction core was becoming more and more difficult to suppress. The power of the star destroyed the structure of the destruction core, and even part of the destruction wave had spread to the surroundings of his scattered consciousness with the help of Chen Ming's consciousness. If Chen Ming had not taken back all the consciousnesses before and only sent consciousnesses to his own territory, at this time, there would probably be several places in the empire that would experience what he was experiencing with Chen Ming. The creatures and the silent alloy composite armor on Chen Ming's body were about to be completely stripped away by destruction. In the surrounding environment, Even the concept of vacuum was being destroyed. Chen Ming's surroundings had been destroyed into a nothing area by destruction. Only Chen Ming and the destruction core were left. Gradually, Chen Ming found that the power of the destruction core at this time was gradually weakening. But this was not a good sign, because he found that the destruction was destroying the barrier between the normal universe and other dimensions. Destruction is erasing the partition between the scarlet dimension and the normal universe. Not only the scarlet dimension and the normal universe, but also the phase space and the normal universe have opened a gap. The power of destruction is acting on space. Even though the gap between the normal universe and the scarlet dimension is only less than 1 millimeter in diameter, the negative impact it brings is immeasurable. The previous dimensional infection is actually the projection of the power of the scarlet dimension in the normal universe. And if destruction continues to destroy the barrier between dimensions, the final result may be. It is a dimensional invasion. Chen Ming knew that he must not let this happen. At the moment when his armor had completely collapsed, he reached forward and grasped the core of destruction in his hand. His body was reduced to ashes in an instant. But his consciousness still held the core of destruction firmly in his hand, and held the location of the space collapse where the core of destruction was at this time in his hand. There were terrible scars on Chen Ming's consciousness. But he still did not let go, but continued to hold the core of destruction tightly. The injuries on his consciousness body not only kept appearing, but also kept repairing. This was not only the effect of Chen Ming's mental power, but also the boat spirit was constantly helping him. At this moment, the boat spirit appeared beside him. With him, various auras full of power appeared. It was the phantom of the boat spirit that appeared here with all the resonant spiritual stones belonging to Chen Ming. Frenzy, fear, and resentment, and a soul-eating stone sent by Bian Gaoxian. Just as Chen Ming was wondering what the boat spirit was going to do, he saw cracks appearing on these spiritual stones that were extremely important to him. The power of the spiritual stone was flowing out and gathering into Chen Ming's body. Chen Ming looked down and saw that his third condensed spiritual energy source appeared in the center of his consciousness body at some point. This was definitely something brought by the boat spirit. The boat spirit and Chen Ming would rise and fall together, so he did not have any doubts about the boat spirit. With a trace of heartache, he completely absorbed the power of the madness word's spiritual stone that had been with him since 3 years ago, and also absorbed the power of several other resonant spirit stones. For a moment, Chen Ming saw the phantom of Qianmian, whose power with resentment existed in the resentment spiritual stone. It should have helped Chen Ming to completely master the power of the resentment spiritual stone when Chen Ming completely killed the brainwashing psychic of Zhuijing. But at this time, the last trace of power of Qianmian in the resentment spiritual stone appeared here. Just die honestly. I will kill the real brainwashing psychic. After Chen Ming's words fell, the phantom of Qianmian disappeared completely. The power condensed in Chen Ming's body. As long as Chen Ming was given a little more time, he could completely master the power brought by these resonant spirit stones with the help of the ship spirit, and rely on this power that completely belonged to him to control the destruction. However, accidents always come faster than tomorrow. At this moment, above the mechanical planet where Chen Ming was, a surge of jump fluctuations suddenly appeared. Something was coming. It was coming with a sense of danger. Although this sense of danger was not so conspicuous in the sense of danger that had destroyed the barriers between spaces, but it was very important. The jump fluctuation ended in an instant. Chen Ming did not see anything from the position where the jump ended. He could only sense a force of scarlet and phase interweaving. He knew what was coming. The appearance of the phase behemoth clan leader was beyond Chen Ming's expectation. But its appearance was indeed reasonable. Originally, Chen Ming had an idea about the clan leader and wanted to use the clan leader to do something in the mechanical clan's territory. So he tried to seduce the clan leader again a few days ago. But after several attempts, he found that the clan leader who had been in the Scarlet Dimension for a long time had very terrifying power. None of the warships that dared to try could come back intact. And even after provoking the clan leader, there was not a single warship that could successfully leave the galaxy before its own structure was destroyed. This made Chen Ming temporarily put aside his thoughts on the clan leader. It just so happened that he also found that the power of the mechanical clan had been almost exhausted in his many attacks using the Zerg, and it was no longer enough. He could blow up the entire mechanical clan by himself without any other external force. So Chen Ming's attitude towards the Phase Behemoth clan leader was to leave it there first and deal with it if there was a chance. And if there was no chance, let the Empire worry about it. That thing is too troublesome to deal with. It is as difficult as fighting a dozen mechanical motherships at the same time, or even more troublesome. Anyway, the Patriarch does not seem to have a strong desire for large-scale destruction. It has been staying in the galaxy where the mechanical race last contacted it and has not left at will. As long as it does not affect him, he will not do anything to cause trouble. But Chen Ming did not expect that he would not care about the Patriarch later. As a result, the Patriarch came here by himself at this time. What is it here for? Chen Ming just thought of this question. He looked at his right arm, where more and more wounds appeared on his consciousness, and the speed of recovery was getting faster and faster. In the palm of his right hand is the destruction core, which is also the gap opened by the destruction core to the phase space and the scarlet dimension. Although the Patriarch has fallen into madness because of the scarlet dimension, its biological instinct is still prompting it to come here to fill this gap. The phase beast exists to block the dimensional gap. Even the Patriarch who has fallen into madness can maintain the barrier between the phase space and the scarlet dimension under normal circumstances. But if the Patriarch comes at this time, it may be bad. Because this may cause Chen Ming to face the influence of destruction, the pressure of the scarlet dimension, and the indiscriminate attack of the phase behemoth Patriarch at the same time. Although this gap leading to the three dimensions also allowed some phase forces to actively resist the influence of destruction and come to help Chen Ming. But facing the real invasion of destruction and the scarlet dimension that also resisted destruction, these helps are still a bit too thin. Just when Chen Ming was thinking about what to do, the phase behemoth Patriarch outside the planet did not come to the planet to trouble him immediately, but instead went to the mechanical motherships that were clearing the Zerg fleet. From the beginning, the Zerg fleet has actually gradually fallen into a disadvantage. Because the mechanical race has gathered all the main force in this galaxy, and Chen Ming's assembled force is not even 1/8 of the total force before. Although the Zerg battleship relied on the cooperation of the normal universe and the phase space during the raid, it played a good effect and helped Chen Ming enter the planet. But the subsequent Zerg power gradually became weak. After they cleared out the mechanical auxiliary fleet and a considerable number of orbital defense facilities, they could no longer cause effective damage to the mechanical mothership cluster. The Zerg fleet in the normal universe can only be easily destroyed by the mothership, and the mechanical race at least has the means to enter the phase space. Even if they force the unmodified mothership to enter the phase space, they must clear out the Zerg. Therefore, when the Zerg in the normal universe are cleared, there are no spaceships in the galaxy. All the motherships were sent into the phase space by the mechanical race. An unobservable battle continued to break out in the phase space. The effect that the Zerg power can exert has obviously stopped here. However, since Chen Ming's target is underground, he does not care about the progress in space. It is the behavior of the phase behemoth Patriarch at this time that allows the Zerg to breathe. Even if the Patriarch has fallen into madness, its first priority target is still the mechanical race. When the body of a creature has grown to tens of thousands of meters, its physical strength will only be stronger than that of a warship of the same size, because creatures need to make more and more agile movements. And it's not just the physical strength. The phase beast Patriarch is even more terrifying because of the phase and scarlet power it controls. I saw purple and red light patterns in the phase space flowing on the Patriarch's body. It allows it to reach the other end of the galaxy from one end of the galaxy without any constraints in the phase space. It only takes a short phase jump, and it only takes a few tenths of a second to reach the back from the front of a mothership. A behemoth that can move almost instantly at a distance measured in a galaxy can destroy the mothership of the mechanical family in a blink of an eye. The mechanical family also used the destroyer to calculate Chen Ming, resulting in them now not even having an effective means to counterattack the phase beast Patriarch. The remaining motherships can only get together and shrink in a tight formation. Under normal circumstances, if the mechanical tribe encounters the clan leader and cannot defeat him, the worst that can happen is that they will give up the star system and let the mothership and the mechanical tribe units that can be evacuated retreat, just like they did before. But now this place is the capital of the mechanical tribe. This time is also the key point for the mechanical tribe to target Chen Ming. If the mothership chooses to escape, there is a certain probability that the clan leader will catch up. It is better to stay. Even if the clan leader really dismantles all the mechanical tribe's spaceships, he will definitely target Chen Ming later. Therefore, the mechanical tribe cannot retreat, and the mothership can only hold on in this star system. And taking advantage of the moment when the mothership was attacked by the clan leader, Chen Ming can also quickly continue the process just now. Continue to rely on the ship's spirit and thoroughly master the complex and diverse external forces that Chen Ming himself possesses. The ship's spirit accompanying Chen Ming's consciousness body quickly merged the power of the broken spirit stone together. Like a dark ball of light, it floated next to the ship's spirit. The spirit stones that resonate with Chen Ming are all spirit stones with extremely strong negative effects. The product of fusion is simply the ultimate collection of negative forces. It would not be out of place to say that it was something taken out from the Scarlet Dimension. But this power is extremely familiar to Chen Ming. Even the familiar feeling that brought a violent impact to his consciousness made him feel that this was actually the strengthening of the words of Madness Spiritual Stone. Chen Ming relied on this power and the combination of Chen Ming's own power and more external forces to merge together and began to forcibly control the power of destruction. Whether it was the shattered destruction core itself or the power that burst out with the shattering of the destruction core, all were curled up because of the power of Chen Ming's spiritual stone. The fused spiritual stone power is integrating the power of destruction into it, swallowing up the destruction together. The knowledge that Chen Ming mastered through several times in the Scarlet Dimension played a role. He could easily analyze the nature of this power and understand its essence. Gradually, the ship's spirit began to be somewhat powerless. Crushing spirit stones, especially those with the strength of the words of madness and those with the word spirit in their names, such as Soul Eater, consumes a lot of energy. It also needs to control these powers to control destruction. Even Chen Ming can't control the core of destruction in his palm now, let alone the boat spirit. Although Chen Ming's condition is getting worse, he can feel that his power is getting stronger. So he took over the progress of the boat spirit. Relying on the shared consciousness of the boat spirit and the experience of smoothing out the chaos core through and whooping before, the power of destruction that has been integrated by the boat spirit and the power of the spirit stone are completely integrated together. But Chen Ming made a little change at this time. He knew that the idea of the boat spirit was to transform the power of destruction into a new system of power that he could control after fusing the power of the spirit stone. Become a fundamental ability of him. But Chen Ming didn't think so. He wanted to try a new approach. He already had enough power, and what he needed was not a new power system, but to continue to better exert the power he had. So, under Chen Ming's control, this new power was drawn into his consciousness and gradually spread throughout the consciousness. Chen Ming had corrected the appearance of his consciousness in front of his boss before, but he did not correct the power he had mastered. His body was in chaos, and when the power of the spirit stone and destruction penetrated into his body, this power immediately stimulated his own power resistance reaction. Of course, this reaction was immediately stopped by Chen Ming. He continued to control this power to contact his condensed spiritual energy source. Relying on the nature of the condensed spiritual energy source, it became a power close to Chen Ming himself, but different from his own complete control. He relied on the repulsiveness of this extremely negative, destructive power to gather the scattered power in the consciousness together. Like the catalyst produced by the catalytic core that he had just used on himself, it catalyzed the process of Chen Ming gathering the power he already had. All the complex powers that had been corrected by him in Chen Ming's own consciousness were integrated. Based on Chen Ming's own cognition, the various organs that constitute his consciousness body. Only the heart is not a normal organ, but a black and empty sphere that emits the fluctuating power of Chen Ming's own power, which is born from his condensed spiritual energy source after being affected by his own power and external forces. This is the final product of Chen Ming's power fusion, which is purer than the chaotic core of An Whooping's heart, because only three kinds of power constitute it: mechanical power, biological power, and dimensional power. Others, whether it is the power overflowing from the destruction or broken spiritual stone, or the ship's spirit that controls these powers to gather together, are only auxiliary to this core. The name of the product after fusion is Natural Disaster Core. Chen Ming doesn't know why it is called this name, but it does not affect him relying on the power of destruction to destroy the redundant parts of his own power system, purify the nature of his own power, and integrate all the power. Although this was an idea that he came up with through the Scarlet Knowledge, the final result was better than he expected. He had never felt that his power was so simple and powerful. However, a problem still troubled Chen Ming. That is, he was still restricted by that bottleneck. Obviously, he had to control a main battleship to completely break through the limitation of the power level. However, although his power level did not change, the strength of his power at this time was already a world of difference compared to before. Even if the destruction core in front of him had been used by Chen Ming and the destructive psychic energy had not been completely dissipated, he could. Chen Ming was just about to suppress the destruction core with the strength of his own power. Suddenly, a huge mouth of the abyss swallowed him and the destruction core in his hand into its belly. It was the leader of the phase behemoth. It had destroyed all the motherships of the mechanical race in the galaxy, so it turned around and swallowed Chen Ming in one gulp. The phase power and the scarlet power were constantly squeezing Chen Ming's consciousness, trying to smash and digest Chen Ming's consciousness. Chen Ming was no longer accommodating the phase beast clan leader and simply used the last resort of the psychic consciousness collision. Chen Ming's consciousness directly dragged the clan leader's consciousness into the consciousness space in the clan leader's body. In the competition of controlling the power of the dimension, Chen Ming might still be a little worried about whether he could not beat the clan leader, but when the clan leader's consciousness was dragged into his consciousness space, Chen Ming knew that he had won. The phase beast clan leader was not a psychic creature, nor a psychic. Its consciousness space was empty, with only a lonely consciousness. The clan leader's consciousness was indeed very powerful, but that was against the power of the phase beast. For Chen Ming, the consciousness of non-psychic creatures was still too weak. And the more important reason was that the appearance of its consciousness was very different from itself, and it was full of injuries and rotten flesh that could never be recovered. The clan leader had been destroyed to this extent by Scarlet, and his consciousness had long been close to the edge of collapse, and was just hanging on by a breath. It has lost its original gentle personality and has become a complete monster affected by Scarlet. Chen Ming no longer needs to hold back. There is no need for the collision of consciousness in the consciousness space. Chen Ming can easily suppress such a broken consciousness. But just when Chen Ming came into contact with the consciousness, a part of the phase power he controlled was suddenly triggered. He suddenly felt something in his heart and pulled the patriarch's consciousness out of the consciousness space and its body. The patriarch's consciousness was gradually breaking apart, and these broken forces were filling the space barrier destroyed by destruction. This is the power that the phase beast has possessed since its birth. Chen Ming immediately continued its previous action, completely controlling the destruction core whose power had dissipated a lot in his hands, and stimulated the maintenance ability to completely repair the destruction core damaged by the stellar power. At the same time, continue to let the patriarch's consciousness fill the space barrier. When the patriarch's consciousness was completely broken, the barrier destroyed by destruction was finally repaired. But Chen Ming frowned again, because he found that the repair of the gap by the patriarch's consciousness was not a complete repair, but a layer of isolation membrane was created between the three spaces. In other words, the repair is only temporary, and this isolation membrane will be damaged sooner or later. And when the isolation membrane is damaged, the power of the scarlet dimension will spread out from here again. The mechanical race really put destruction in front of everyone in the empire. Chen Ming thought about it and tried to release some dimensional power to reinforce it, but his power was just a drop in the bucket compared to the gap. Construction is much more difficult than destruction. His power cannot completely block the gap and can only temporarily block it like the patriarch's consciousness. If you want to completely repair the crack, the difficulty. However, this kind of thing is not a problem for Chen Ming alone, so he didn't worry after recording the situation here. Anyway, it's useless to worry. Anyway, the gap is there, and the repaired isolation membrane will not be damaged in a short time. Chen Ming walked back in the direction that was just swallowed by the patriarch. He walked out of the patriarch's mouth and stood in the ruins of a mechanical building. The body of the clan leader was lying quietly beside him. He looked up. The phase force allowed him to see through the space barrier and see that the several mechanical motherships in the orbit of the planet had all been destroyed. Of course, all his Zergs died here. The living forces of the mechanical race have really been completely destroyed. Even if the military forces fighting the front line and the Empire were called back, it would no longer make any sense. It's over. The war between Chen Ming and the mechanical race was completely over in less than a month. The war between the Empire and the mechanical race had only lasted for a few months, and the victory of the Empire could be declared. Of course, it would take several years for the Empire to really occupy an entire mechanical star field. After all, the difficulty of occupying a colony is not the same as the difficulty of destroying a colony. Chen Ming breathed a sigh of relief with some emotion. It's finally over. But what he had to do was not over yet. Since we are here, let's take some things away. This is the capital planet of the mechanical race after all. Although the mechanical race guided the stellar matter to the planet just now, causing destruction and causing large areas to be damaged. But there are still intact areas on the planet at this time. Chen Ming's consciousness body leisurely came to another colony on the mechanical race's capital planet. He invaded the mechanical race database here and obtained all the data of the mechanical race. After picking up the colony and putting it in the one controlled by Chen Ming's mechanical race near the border of the Empire, Chen Ming took a quick look at the information he got from the mechanical race database. The database contains blueprints of all mechanical race units and blueprints of various mechanical race warships. From motherships to carrier-based aircraft, no matter what blueprints are there. And there is also a Defense Force control map of the mechanical race star field in the database. This control map is different from the previous one. When the previous control map was leaked, the mechanical race still had the energy to modify it. But now, let alone modifying it, it is a question whether the mechanical race can survive for a few weeks. It can only be said that as long as this thing is mastered, even if Chen Ming has lost all his combat power at this time, he can still control the mechanical race in this star field. Chen Ming also found the mechanical race's action plan against the Empire in the database. Originally, the mechanical race planned to use all production lines in the war and then maintain a shrinking attitude towards the Empire on the surface. When the resources are exhausted and the warships can no longer be produced, all the remaining forces will be dispersed and transferred to the Empire, killing as many as possible. Not for victory, but only for creating killing. However, Chen Ming jumped behind the mechanical race, causing the mechanical race to change their minds and concentrate their forces on Chen Ming. Even in the end, even destruction itself was used as part of the trap. It's a pity that the mechanical race's action still failed. After all, he is still a step ahead. Chen Ming continued to search in the database and found the log of the mechanical race's expansion of the entire star field. It can help him avoid problems on the road of colonization and development. In addition, there are many valuable documents. But when he was casually looking through the records of the mechanical race, he found that there was something missing, something that was very important to humans. History. Chen Ming could understand the operating principles of the entire mechanical race through the data in the database. But he could not understand the history of the mechanical race, and he could not find any records related to the mechanical race in history. He had no idea how the mechanical race was born and how it survived after the destruction of the Shining Civilization. Chen Ming was still very curious about the past of the mechanical race. After all, the mechanical race was a relic of the Shining Civilization anyway, and it was part of the scope that his power could cover, and it was also something that Chen Ming still couldn't understand why it seemed to have a deep hatred with the Zerg. Chen Ming also went to the Shining Civilization Research Institute. and it seemed that their exploration of history was only in progress. I don't understand. Chen Ming always felt that there might be something hidden in the history of the mechanical race, but now it seemed that there was no chance to figure it out. He had nothing to say, and after taking a final look at the file, he was ready to continue doing what he should do. But in the end, he suddenly found a huge file. This file looks like a star map file, and the size of this file is much larger than the star map files Chen Ming usually sees. It is not a difference of several times or dozens of times, but thousands of times, or even more than that. Chen Ming immediately took some time to open this star map file. When this star map was opened, Chen Ming didn't even understand the contents of the file at first. But after he looked at it carefully for a while, he suddenly realized the problem. He saved this star map with a serious expression and specially copied several storage units as copies. He felt a little pressure in his heart. After all the things in the mechanical star field were done, Chen Ming's consciousness returned to the bodies before he stepped into the trap of the mechanical tribe. His prosthesis on the front line immediately opened its eyes. But he was no longer in the command room, but on a hospital bed. He was sent to the hospital. Bai Quan's voice sounded from the side. "You woke up. The doctor said you are in very good health." Chen Ming sat up and waved to Bai Quan. "Don't rush to ask if you have anything to ask. I want to talk to a few people, and I will talk to them at that time." "Okay, who to find?" "Those related to psychic power and two dimensions. It's better to have more people in the Legion, and Xiao Bowen should also be called." "Xiao Bowen may not be free," Bai Quan said. "He needs command. The counterattack of the mechanical tribe has suddenly become fierce just now." "It's okay. This is just the last struggle of the mechanical tribe. You can fight casually after this wave." Bai Quan was about to ask Chen Ming how he knew it, but then he thought of Chen Ming's words, "Don't ask." So he really didn't ask, just said, "Then I'll go prepare the connection." But Chen Ming stopped him again and said, "No, I need to have an offline meeting." Bai Quan was puzzled. "You are looking for so many people. How can we have an offline meeting?" "Just find the president." Bai Quan's expression suddenly became serious. The content of the meeting that required the president of the Psychic Society to personally call people to convene would definitely not be simple. At the same time as Chen Ming's prosthesis woke up, at the Ship Research Institute of the headquarters, Chen Ming's robot also returned to its previous appearance. The meeting room was still the same as before. After noticing that the robot was moving, the two institute directors immediately looked at Chen Ming and said, "Finally back? We have just discussed the results." But Chen Ming waved his hand. "Don't rush to talk about this. I have something more important to tell you." More than 10 minutes later, Chen Ming efficiently called all the people he thought needed to be called, including the minister of the psychic department. Some people affiliated with the Empire and Fanchao Research Institute were also called by Chen Ming. Except for the people who were already in the Fanchao Research Institute, everyone else appeared in the Fanchao Research Institute with the help of the president's psychic power. This was a position designated by the minister of the psychic department. The institute also had a conference room, so it was directly given to Chen Ming to use. Although the Empire's attitude towards Chen Ming had been determined before, it was to treat him coldly and let him do whatever he wanted, as long as he didn't mess around. However, when Chen Ming took the initiative to propose that there was something important to announce, and he also asked the president to help bring people. And just as he said last time, he had never taken the initiative to cause trouble. The people Chen Ming found had to give him some face anyway. And Whooping was also called over, of course. It can only be said that it was fortunate that Whooping was at night before, and when Chen Ming regained consciousness, it was rest time, otherwise there might be problems. How could he continue to chat with the Minister of Psychic about the sharing of biotechnology like now? Even the boss was brought over by the president, sitting next to the president and watching silently. The meeting room was soon full, and the number of people did not continue to increase. The president didn't seem to want to continue using psychic energy. Originally, he didn't want to come. After all, the mechanical tribe was counterattacking fiercely, but considering that what Chen Ming said might be important in 10 minutes, Xiao Bowen, who came with Bai Quan, asked the president next to him, "Where is Chen Ming?" The president said, "He said he would come by himself." As soon as the president finished speaking, Chen Ming pushed open the door of the conference room and walked in. Ordinary people in the conference room didn't see the problem. But a few psychics, except the boss and the president, had a flash of surprise in their eyes. They instantly understood Chen Ming's situation. The head of the psychic department, Luo Yi, was the first to greet Chen Ming. "Mr. Chen Ming, we meet again so soon. How did you do this?" "You will know soon." Chen Ming greeted the people in the conference room. He looked at Whooping, stared at Luo Yi for a few more times, and came to the main seat at the conference table. He inserted a storage unit into the computer and started playing the whole process of his troubles in the mechanical tribe's territory in the conference room. Only a part of these videos were recorded by Chen Ming himself. The rest relied on the mental connection between the queen and Chen Ming to share the vision, and then used the device to read the queen's memory and record the images and sounds. In this way, even if Chen Ming's body is destroyed, the subsequent situation can still be fully recorded. As you can see, I led the Zerg fleet to attack the capital of the mechanical clan. As for why I can directly attack the capital of the mechanical clan, I have compiled the things that Whooping and I have done in the mechanical clan Starfield in recent times into a file and put it on the computer in front of you. If you are interested, you can read it yourself. I will continue to talk. Everyone in the conference room clicked on the computer in a very unified manner, and at the same time looked at Whooping next to him. Whooping picked up the water cup in front of him and drank it silently, saying nothing. This tacit agreement made everyone present think about it. And when the people in the conference room, who could read 10 lines at a glance, finished reading the results created by the Zerg in these days in the file placed by Chen Ming, the few people who were originally a little curious about what Chen Ming was going to do all stopped whispering. At the same time, they couldn't help but look at Whooping twice more. The power of the Zerg fleet looked really terrifying. However, the protagonist of this meeting was Chen Ming. So everyone still looked at the video that Chen Ming put on the big screen in the conference room. The video was playing at an accelerated speed. It quickly went through the whole process of Chen Ming's attack on the capital of the mechanical race. When they saw that there were only 9 motherships and a large number of destroyers and escorts on the screen, and no cruisers that the mechanical race could use, everyone was basically sure that everything on the computer was real. However, Chen Ming's focus was obviously on when he successfully reached the surface of the planet and discovered the surface devices and the underground laboratory. So these contents were quickly skipped. When Chen Ming passed through the destruction area and entered the laboratory, he explained, "That is the destruction core of the mechanical race's destroyer." The existence of the destroyer was mentioned by Chen Ming a long time ago. Previously, the mechanical tribe had used the destroyer to clash with the Black Mist Zerg. So the Empire, which had been monitoring the Black Mist Zerg, had of course seen the effects of the destroyer in action. They knew how powerful the destroyer was. So when everyone heard Chen Ming say this, everyone suddenly became alert. What are they going to do with the destroyer? Isn't this obvious? A trap. In the video, Chen Ming decisively stepped into the trap prepared for him by the mechanical tribe and touched the destruction core. A wave of turbulent destruction swept across Chen Ming in an instant, but Chen Ming did not seem to have changed at all. The power released by this thing. It's enough to kill me many times, right? But I'm still alive, just in a different state than before. Bai Quan didn't quite understand the topic between the psychics and asked, "Why is it different?" Chen Ming stretched out his hand to Bai Quan and said, "Shake hands." Bai Quan didn't understand what Chen Ming meant, but still stretched out his hand. But his hand went straight through Chen Ming's body and landed in the air. As you can see, my body is gone, and what's left is only my consciousness. But that's a fake body made by Whooping for temporary use. Why do you think I ran to the Legion when I was still weak before? Obviously, I have the confidence. Seeing that Bai Quan seemed to be worried about something strange. Don't worry, no matter which body it is, it's the same, and Whooping also stores my genes. If necessary, he can help me create a stronger body. Everyone looked at Whooping again. Seeing Whooping drink a sip of the freshly brewed tea and nod slightly, everyone turned their attention back to Chen Ming. Luo Yi asked meaningfully, "So you are different from Whooping, right?" Although this question has a very obvious direction, answering it can obviously help Chen Ming explain a lot of things, so he answered it truthfully. Not exactly the same. He relies on the hive mind network to achieve the aggregation and splitting of consciousness, while I am a pure, independent consciousness. Of course, I have mastered the honeycomb network technology of the mechanical race. Keep watching, the key is behind. Although his body collapsed, Chen Ming still struggled to control the destruction core. But the people in the conference room couldn't see what this meant. After all, just watching the video record would definitely not show that the power of the destruction core is acting on space and destroying the barriers between spaces. They could only see that Chen Ming seemed to have a lot of ideas about the destruction core, and he was still holding on to it even though his body was destroyed. But Chen Ming didn't rush to explain, because the phase behemoth leader soon appeared. When the first mechanical mothership was suddenly fanned into two sections by an inexplicable force, the perspective of the video switched to space, and then to the phase space. Cut off the scene of Chen Ming integrating his own power at this time, so that everyone in the conference room could only see the process of the phase behemoth leader wreaking havoc. Several people from the research institutes were excited at once and wanted to say something to Chen Ming. However, Chen Ming did not give them a chance and signaled them to continue watching. After the patriarch killed all the motherships of the mechanical race, it entered the surface of the planet. It landed near Chen Ming, and the field of vision returned to Chen Ming. As soon as the perspective was cut back, Chen Ming saw a bloody mouth swallowing his consciousness. A few seconds later, the body of the phase behemoth patriarch, who had just destroyed 9 motherships of the mechanical race with extremely powerful means, suddenly froze and almost lost his life in an instant. This is fucking Chiu Bowen, who knew the combat power of the mechanical race motherships best, subconsciously wanted to swear, but he still restrained himself. Chen Ming explained, I touched its consciousness strength, and it was obvious that its consciousness strength was not good enough. By the way, this phase behemoth patriarch has entered the scarlet dimension for about a few minutes. So although its power has become stronger, its consciousness is close to collapse, and it is not difficult to deal with it. That's not a big deal. The next one is the key. Chen Ming eliminated the clan leader, suppressed the destruction core, and repaired the damage to the destruction core. Naturally, the core of destruction was also taken away. And when the core of destruction left its original position, the cracked space gap finally appeared on the screen. Although the rupture in space was being repaired by something, several psychics and researchers studying space technology present immediately felt something was wrong. Luo asked again, what is this? This is the gap in the space barrier created by the destruction core, connecting the phase space and the scarlet dimension. What? Isn't it? There was a commotion in the conference room. Chen Ming said nothing and waited silently for the others to finish arguing. After the conference room became quiet, he said, I don't think I need to lie to people. It won't do me any good. Luo struggled for half a second between belief and disbelief, and finally chose to believe. He also directly grasped the key to the problem and asked, does this mean? Yes, the scarlet dimension can already lock the position of this dimension through this gap. The sequelae of the dimension infection will start to expand from this gap and will never stop. What I'm doing is using the consciousness of the phase beast leader, which is what it does, to temporarily repair the gap, as you can see. Temporary. Yes, it's just temporary. Someone needs to be dedicated to guarding and repairing it here. Otherwise, once this gap breaks, you should be able to guess the consequences. Even if you have blocked it, will the sequelae of dimensional infection still occur? Yes, but there is also good news. This place has gaps in 3 dimensions at the same time. It is also a very interesting place. It should be used for research, but it is a little bit dangerous. The director of the Legion Psychic Research Institute subconsciously said, this is not a question of danger or not, is it? Chen Ming spread his hands. It can only be said that it is fortunate that the core of destruction was exploded in the star field of the mechanical tribe. Otherwise, the location of the gap would be here in the Empire, which would only be more troublesome. Is there a way to eradicate it? I don't know. It takes time to study, whether it's my time or your time. I think it's not enough for me to do this kind of thing alone. The Empire must work together to study it. That's why I will inform everyone here. Otherwise, if we continue to let this gap remain, the final result should not be a dimensional infection, but a dimensional invasion. That was a true act of God. I know you are all suspicious, but I have told you the coordinates. If you are willing, go check it yourself and take safety measures. Tell me one more thing. Chen Ming ended the video screening and took out a storage unit the size of a brick. I also got something on the Machine Clan's territory. In this storage unit, the star map that Chen Ming obtained from the mechanical tribe is stored. The people in the conference room suddenly felt a headache. A storage unit the size of the tip of a pinky finger can maintain the basic operation of a cruiser. What's stored in such a brick-sized storage unit? The size of the storage unit used by Chen Ming when playing the video was normal, so taking out this brick now was definitely not a trick. Chen Ming conveniently modified his computer. This ordinary office computer was connected to the external server he usually used, which made it easier for him to open files and prevent the computer from being burned out. Even so, everyone in the conference room waited for a long time before the files in the storage unit were completely opened. Let's see. This is our universe. This star map document records data on a huge cosmic structure. And this cosmic structure contains everything the Empire occupies, and more. That's why Chen Ming didn't react immediately when he saw it. Because there are a large number of galaxies on this star map that are beyond the Empire's perspective and cannot be reached under normal circumstances. That is, places that exceed the Empire's observable universe. Of course, it is not completely impossible for the current Empire to observe. It just requires access to some faster-than-light means. It wasn't until Chen Ming discovered the territory of the Empire on this star map that he knew he had seen a broader world. But it's more than that. When Chen Ming just obtained the star map, he discovered that the Empire's position had been marked on the star map. Also marked are the locations of the areas occupied by all the mechanical races. All, or in other words, all in this universe covered by this star map document. Very close to the borders of the Empire. It's hundreds of millions, billions, or even tens of billions of light years away. It can only be said that there are mechanical races almost everywhere in the entire star map. No matter how remote, small, or barren the place is, they are there. No matter how carefully you search, no matter how much you expand your field of vision, you can only see the mechanical race. The only ones that exist on this star map are the mechanical race. And the human empire seems to be surrounded by endless machines. Chen Ming had searched carefully just now, but he could not find any trace of other civilizations on this star map. He didn't know whether it was because the mechanical race had no records or whether the universe was really lonely and only humans had developed civilization. He preferred to believe it was the latter, because although the machine race is a ferocious race, that ferocity is only aimed at humans. Academically, it is believed that the machine tribe is targeting humanoids, because according to the remains of the Shining Civilization discovered by the Empire, the main species of the Shining Civilization are likely to be humanoids. Moreover, the mechanical race has no special hatred for ordinary creatures. They can coexist with indigenous creatures on some habitable planets. Although the mechanical race's own nanorobots will produce toxic substances when operating, the planet with the mechanical race colony will sooner or later become a planet that is extremely toxic to living things. But they really don't deliberately target ordinary creatures. Therefore, Chen Ming feels that there is a high probability that the machine race will not harm other creatures. In the universe, they are really the only civilization that exists. Of course, the afterglow next door is not yet considered civilized, and they are at risk of being captured by the Empire at any time. In short, countless star fields on this star map are occupied by the mechanical race. The distance between some mechanical races is so far that they are unable to communicate with each other and can only have basic understanding of each other. Even the distance between the nearest mechanical tribe that provided reinforcements to the mechanical tribe here exceeds the diameter of the area occupied by the entire empire. The distance between the mechanical race and the mechanical race is still quite far. It's just that after the number and coverage of the mechanical clan are enlarged to a certain scale, the power of the mechanical clan is really too huge compared to the empire. This is just the observable universe. In that deeper and darker universe, no one knows what is there. The star map file was zoomed in and out, completely displaying the same mechanical clan in different places and the empire surrounded by numerous mechanical clans. Everyone in the conference room became more silent as they watched. If it were the old days, that would be fine. But now, the empire has just begun to regain its pioneering spirit. If it wants to restart the pioneering era, heavy shackles and shackles have been put on the neck of the empire. This is a heavy blow to any ambitious person. This is what I got from the machinery clan. You know what the machinery clan is like. If one machine race knows it, it means that all the machine race knows it. The mechanical race here has come to an end. You might as well guess whether they will do something. Maybe not long after. Luo Yi added for Chen Ming. The machine tribe will unite and launch an extermination operation against the empire. With the way the machine tribe does things, I have no doubt that they will really do this. If such a large number of machine races were to unite, it would also be a disaster for the empire. This is also a natural disaster that threatens the empire more effectively than dimensional invasion. Luo Yi glanced at Whooping and suddenly felt relieved in his heart. Fortunately, they still maintained a quite friendly relationship with Whooping, and Whooping did not lose his mind or his thoughts on life while getting along with the Zerg. Otherwise, the empire may have to face a third natural disaster, and it is a natural disaster that is very close at hand. Chen Ming glanced at everyone present. I don't think anyone would say this is my problem, right? Even if the machine race doesn't plan to target me, their destructive core is right there, and sooner or later it will lead to today's results. The machine tribe has known about the empire for a long time. If the empire invades the machine tribe, it will certainly be counterattacked by the machine tribe. No one wants to cause trouble for me, right? Of course not. Luo Yi also knew that Chen Ming was disgusted by all kinds of people, so he immediately assured him. Chen Ming nodded. Okay, then this is what I have come to talk to you about today. That's it. If you don't understand any details, you can ask me now or later. If you want to quickly verify whether what I said is true or false, I have a quick way. Meeting dismissed. All the things that needed to be explained were explained, and all the things that needed to be dealt with were dealt with. Chen Ming's main consciousness returned to the Yuhui fleet that was being developed. He returned to the highest point where he had always been accustomed to staying. He greeted Hui Huang and Xiao Fan, and played with Xiaoshi for a while. By the way, he used this short time to do some more things in the mechanical star field. After doing all this, Chen Ming lay directly on the bed, reduced the proportion of consciousness borne by the consciousness bodies in other places to the minimum, and closed his eyes. In this way, converging the consciousness bodies in other places can make his consciousness relax the most. He really needs a rest. Even if he has no body now, the consciousness body needs to rest after a long period of busyness. Especially during the period when he was fighting with the mechanical race, his average daily rest time was not even more than 2 hours. He really needs a long-lost rest. Chen Ming cut off most of the ways to contact him, and let his consciousness enter the drowsy state of dormancy. Time came to 24 hours later in a blink of an eye. Chen Ming got up in high spirits. The first thing he did after waking up was to count the gains. Chen Ming's purpose of participating in the war and clashing with the mechanical race has always been very clear, which is to gain benefits in the war. And the benefits he gained from defeating the mechanical race are also obvious. If we look at it from a larger material level, the biggest benefit he gained this time is the colony of the complete mechanical race capital galaxy that he took away at the end. Everything in this mechanical race star field is included in this colony, whether it is data or what a colony or any mechanical race colony should have. It pointed out the future development direction of his mechanical race to Chen Ming. The mechanical race is one of the basic sources of Chen Ming's power system at this time. The star map document also confirmed that the existence of the mechanical race is extremely powerful, and it will never be wrong to cultivate your own mechanical race. Having such a colony can save countless trial and error costs and time. The value is immeasurable. In addition to this colony, the second most valuable thing should be the Stargate. It was not just the Stargate that Chen Ming had taken away in front of the mechanical race some time ago, but also another Stargate in the mechanical race's capital galaxy that he had taken away yesterday when he played with Xiaoshi for a while before taking a break. After all, Stargates must be used in pairs, and he would always find a way to get another one. There was a ready-made opportunity, and he could not let it go. The value of the Stargate, in addition to its own value. It also lies in opening up an efficient, fast, and large-scale material transportation route between Chen Ming's mechanical race galaxy at the border of the Empire and the place where his pioneering fleet arrived. This does not require a large amount of his mental power like Chen Ming is now transporting materials to the front line, but only requires a large amount of energy. For Chen Ming, who has a large amount of energy source provided by the Zerg, the demand for energy is nothing. Although the movement when the Stargate is activated is not small. It is not a movement visible to the naked eye, but a movement of space fluctuations on the scale of the universe. At that time, Chen Ming will have to deal with the problems on the Empire side. But it won't be a big deal. Chen Ming is no longer afraid of anyone or any force. Periodic large-scale transportation of materials is still very valuable to Chen Ming. After all, although the scale of the pioneering fleet is expanding very slowly, it is still expanding. Transporting materials every day will also take up a lot of his free time. It is very meaningful for Chen Ming to save this time and mental energy to do other things. It just so happens that Chen Ming's Zerg unit has also begun to expand, and the efficiency is also very terrifying. The expansion process of the Zerg is the process of devouring planets and developing planetary resources. Under normal circumstances, the expansion of the Zerg devours all the resources of the planet. But at Chen Ming's request, the Queen of Zerg controlled this situation, which means that a lot of resources will be collected when the Zerg expands. Many of these resources will be provided to the pioneering fleet. But there are also some resources that the pioneering fleet cannot use, or there are too many resources that have nowhere to use. These resources can be concentrated at the temporary base of the pioneering, sent back to the Empire through the Stargate, and sold back to make a profit. Although Chen Ming's ability is already very strong, so far, money is still very important to him. It's not like the money is just a number. So the Stargate has multiple values for Chen Ming. The second valuable thing is a giant structure that Chen Ming took away when he took the Stargate from the Mechanical Clan. The giant dock of the Mechanical Clan. Chen Ming has been thinking about this thing for a long time, and he also took it away when the Mechanical Clan's defense force was empty. With it, there is capital to build a main battleship. After the strategically valuable things, the 2 complete motherships of the Mechanical Clan and the wreckage of 7 damaged motherships are the next valuable. Chen Ming had already thought of the use of the 2 complete Mechanical Clan motherships. One will be given to HR, the strongest individual of Yuhui in combat at present. It is the Yuhui core that Baikuan obtained on the battlefield where the Empire and the main forces of Yuhui fought. After a period of adaptation, it will surely make the mothership play its due value. Chen Ming plans to give the other mothership to the Queen. After the recent affairs with the mechanical race, the Queen finally has some free time. It can finally start to eat various things, such as the phase behemoth scales that Chen Ming had obtained some time ago, to obtain new genes. Of course, it can also assimilate the battleship. The day when the Queen successfully assimilates the battleship, that is the day when the Zerg can mass-produce the battleship. When the Zerg can mass-produce the battleship, then there will be no one in the world, at least around the Empire area, who can restrict him. This will not be a very distant thing. As for the wreckage, it will become Chen Ming's test product in the process of mastering the battleship-level technology. In addition, Chen Ming also has a weakened destruction core after leaking some of its power. The power of destruction is very strong, but not the kind of strength that Chen Ming needs. He wants to make his own power stronger. However, it is still okay if the destruction core is only used as a weapon. The mothership driven by HR can continue to use the destroyer as a weapon, but its power will be slightly weaker than after it was used by Chen Ming and part of its power was dissipated. As a battleship-level psychic weapon, even if it is weaker than before, it is more powerful than any other battleship-level weapon of the same level. It's like the person who originally ranked first suddenly lost more than 10 points, but still far exceeded the second place by more than 100 points. And Chen Ming estimated that he would not encounter any situation that required the battleship to be dispatched for a long time. After the destroyer core, he might even feed it to Enwhooping and become one of the powers of Enwhooping's special prosthesis. So the value of the destroyer core is somewhat subjective. There is no denying its own value, but for him who does not need to fight often, or does not need to fight battles at the battleship level often, the value of using it is indeed not high. Just put it there for now. In addition, Chen Ming has another thing in his hand that is in a similar situation. It is the corpse of a phase behemoth leader who has been in the Scarlet Dimension for a long time and has powerful power. This thing gave Chen Ming a headache before, and he didn't know how to deal with it. The Zerg didn't need to eat all the genes of the phase beast, just a little bit would be enough. Even if they only ate the scales that the small phase shed before, they would probably be able to get all the genes. It was just that Chen Ming was more worried that the queen would not be able to eat the scales of the small phase, so he planned to feed the queen some extra flesh and blood. Although this was somewhat dangerous, it was still worth doing, and Chen Ming had enough backup to prevent danger. But this would only eat a little of the patriarch's body. There were still tens of thousands of meters of corpses lying there, and I didn't know how to deal with them better. But this was the situation before. Now, after Chen Ming combined another thing that bothered him, he gradually had a somewhat crazy idea. Chen Ming has been struggling with the problem of choosing his first battleship. He wanted a powerful and perfect battleship. Then why not try it on the corpse of the phase beast patriarch? Transform the corpse of this powerful creature into a war machine and a battleship. The clan leader himself possesses the same dimensional power as Chen Ming and has a very good affinity with Chen Ming. Then, as long as he integrates other powers he possesses during the transformation process, wouldn't he be able to create a truly perfect battleship for him? The more Chen Ming thought about it, the more feasible it was. He had already mastered the semi-biological and semi-mechanized transformation technology before. After a period of study and expansion, there would be absolutely no problem in applying it here. Of course, there is no rush to start this matter directly. There are too many things to consider when manufacturing a battleship. Not only the design of the ship itself, but also the difficulty of manufacturing main weapons, as well as more technical issues. The manufacture of a battleship is not something that can be done on a whim, and it also needs to be built with matching giant structures. Chen Ming's spiritual ability can master the use of giant docks, but mastering it alone is definitely not enough for his ideas. Mastering the use of giant docks can use docks to manufacture ordinary battleships, but it is absolutely impossible to use an ordinary giant dock to manufacture a battleship that is semi-biological, semi-mechanical, and even has dimensional power. These technologies need to be accumulated with experience. Chen Ming wanted a perfect, or close to perfect, battleship. As the first battleship under his control, he had to treat it with the highest standards and never take it easy. So Chen Ming's idea was not to rely solely on the technology he had mastered. He had many people to find, to ask them to help him develop a powerful battleship. There was nothing wrong with cooperating in the development of a big project like a battleship, apart from these external gains. The rest was Chen Ming's own gains. He used the power of the destruction core and the catalysis of the ship's spirit to integrate all his own power, making his power no longer independent, and the strength had also changed significantly compared to before. Although he lost all his resonant spirit stones and a spirit-eating stone. But the calamity core formed by the integrated power source can just offset these losses. Compared with the external gains, the calamity core, the source of Chen Ming's power, is obviously more important. The overall gains are probably just these. Although there are no larger scales, such as galaxies and planets, that can be directly attributed to his gains. But the things Chen Ming got have made his future development path smooth. Chen Ming finally looked back at his gains and confirmed the direction of the next move. He was ready to reshape his body first. Although the pure consciousness body is very convenient, he is still more accustomed to physical activities. Chen Ming had this idea, and the consciousness body immediately came to the Queen of the Worm. After all, the Queen of the Worm is very close to Chen Ming at this time. She is expanding the worm nest on a planet in the galaxy of the temporary base of the development. Chen Ming does not need to control any Zerg units to meet the Queen of the Worm. He can come here with a little movement. It is not too troublesome to create a new body. After all, the Queen of Zerg has made so many prostheses that it has memorized Chen Ming's gene sequence. But this alone is not enough. Chen Ming's idea is to build a basic body based on human genes, and then let the Queen of Zerg stuff some additional body parts that have been strengthened to be more suitable for the human body into the body. He still wants to be a human, not a worm. All organs are based on his own genes, and some special effects are achieved by imitating the functions of Zerg organs. In addition, Chen Ming also prepared some nanorobots for himself. Like the units of the mechanical family, he relies on nanorobots to repair and maintain himself. At the same time, it can also improve his physical fitness to a certain extent. This is also the technology that Chen Ming has mastered after mastering more and more robots. It can be regarded as an experiment on himself before using it in other units and batches. The toxic substances discharged by nanorobots can be uniformly treated by Zerg organs to make these toxic substances harmless. Not to mention reaching the level of physical strength of an Whooping, at least his body should not be killed by any random weapon. Although he is no longer afraid of his body being killed, it is still troublesome to rebuild his body if it dies too easily and casually. It took more than 10 minutes to prepare his body. Chen Ming also plans to start from today to practice his idea of using the corpse of the phase behemoth leader to build a new battleship. But before starting this kind of work that takes a long time and a lot of investment, Chen Ming remembered the last thing he had not dealt with before: the ruins. It was because of the ruins that Chen Ming and the mechanical tribe had a full-scale conflict, which forced Chen Ming to wipe out the main forces of the mechanical tribe. Later, the mechanical tribe had no spare energy to explore the ruins, and Chen Ming would not be idle and suddenly run to other places to make trouble when he was in a great advantage on the front battlefield. So the ruins are still preserved today. He went to see it, but he couldn't forget this place. Chen Ming immediately dispatched several cruisers newly produced by the Queen Zerg and jumped to the galaxy located by the mechanical race. This was a place that the mechanical race did not develop immediately before, but only marked. But Chen Ming did not find any threats in the initial investigation. Now he even drove the cruiser over, but did not find any problems in the galaxy. Of course, this did not affect Chen Ming's investigation of the ruins of the Shining Civilization. He did not even need to let the Zerg cruisers land. He directly let several cruisers throw down some substances controlled by his psychic power. Let these substances go deep into the ground, and according to the data of the ruins investigated by the mechanical race, the location of the ruins was confirmed. Then Chen Ming found that the ruins of the Shining Civilization were a very modern laboratory. There was nothing to say. The afterglow core was transmitted, and the ruins were under his control. Chen Ming first looked at the ruins, which were the defense facilities of the laboratory of the Shining Civilization. They are some independent mechanical guards who are not connected to the honeycomb network of the mechanical race, and the logic running program is locked and cannot be changed. They are only responsible for guarding the interior of the laboratory, but they seem to have guarded nothing. The entire laboratory is a mess, and there are traces of Thorn Zerg activities everywhere. I don't know if they are here to track down the pollutants of the mechanical race. Anyway, Chen Ming did not see any corpses of the main species of the Shining Civilization. The Zerg that invaded the laboratory was most likely destroyed in the end. The corpses were thrown outside and turned into mud after a few years. There is no clue to tell. In short, there are no survivors in the laboratory. But there is one place in this laboratory that makes Chen Ming feel very strange. In addition to the mechanical race, the laboratory's defense means also includes some independent nanorobots that are not installed on the mechanical race. The program settings of these nanorobots are not simply to protect the laboratory, but have an independent command: destroy the mechanical race. Chen Ming didn't understand why this happened. He didn't know if the programs of these nanorobots had broken down after so many years, or if there were other reasons. He couldn't figure it out. However, there were still some valuable things in this laboratory, such as the data of the objects studied by the laboratory and the samples of something it had studied. When he saw the name of the sample he got, Chen Ming suddenly felt that most of the gains he had obtained in this war were not even as valuable as it. Because the thing that the Shining Civilization studied was called resurrection mechanical fluid. It was not a liquid for resurrecting the mechanical family, but an item that used a cluster of nanomachines with a liquid appearance to resurrect the dead. As long as there was a corpse, even if there were only a few cells left, resurrection would definitely not be a problem. Although it was unclear why such a thing would appear at the border of an area that was relatively different from the current academic belief that the main star field of the shining civilization was occupied. But he was indeed the crystallization of the shining civilization's technology. To be honest, this thing didn't mean much to Chen Ming. He didn't know any important people who needed this thing, although it was not bad to keep it. After all, who knew when birth, aging, sickness, death, and accidents would come? Others are not like him, who can still survive after losing their bodies. The value of keeping it is immeasurable, and the value of releasing it may cause the entire empire to go crazy. Chen Ming quickly got a sample of the mechanical fluid. He stared at the can-shaped object with a mechanized structure and a transparent outer wall in his hand, and could see the mechanical fluid flowing inside. No one would have thought that this was something that could revive people just by looking at the appearance. Although Chen Ming didn't know whether this can of resurrection fluid was still effective and whether it could revive humans, if Chen Ming's psychic power was not a problem, this thing would have such an effect. Thinking of this, Chen Ming felt more and more bizarre. If this thing was developed by the Empire, it must have come from the Fanchao Research Institute. It is impossible to come out of a random laboratory that looks ordinary on the border. But the shining civilization has really become like this. It is very puzzling. Maybe Chen Ming will have time to go to the Shining Civilization Research Institute to learn some information later. Now, before Chen Ming was about to put away the resurrection mechanical fluid, he suddenly remembered something his boss had said to him. Some words about a person the boss once knew and called little crazy by the boss. Chen Ming didn't know much about this little crazy. But when the boss talked about this little crazy, his tone was very nostalgic and regretful, and the person seemed to be dead. With this resurrection mechanical fluid, Chen Ming thought about it and made a decision. A few minutes later, hardware store in the pirate space station. The boss picked his ears and asked Chen Ming, "What did you say you got?" Resurrection mechanical fluid. As long as there is a corpse, you can resurrect a person. After being shocked, the boss returned to his usual self. "Oh, then why did you tell me this?" "Because you mentioned a person called Little Crazy before." The boss was stunned for a moment, shook his head slightly, and said, "You actually remember what I said casually." "Him. I told you before that I like to find people to train everywhere, and he is the last person I trained. He may be dead, at least when I found him. I only saw a little burnt ash. I don't know if it's him, but I have to try, right?" The boss suddenly sighed. "This is also what I didn't tell you before. One of the reasons why I left the prosperous star field of the Empire." "So how did he die?" "I don't know if you have heard of something that happened decades ago. Several Reaper torpedoes used by frigates sank the battleship." Chen Ming found the memory about the Reaper torpedo from the corner of his memory. Recalling everything in the past, a question gradually emerged in his mind. There seems to be something wrong with the Reaper torpedo, right? 3 years ago, when Chen Ming just arrived in the pirate space, he got a Reaper torpedo. Its power is indeed very large, but that is relative to the frigate that can launch the Reaper torpedo. This power may threaten the cruiser, but it is absolutely impossible to sink the capital ship. The capital ship can withstand the attack of the main weapon. No matter how many Reaper torpedoes there are, it is unlikely to break through the capital ship's own shield. How can it really threaten the capital ship, let alone sink the capital ship? And the capital ship that Chen Ming remembered being sunk was a capital ship of the military of a star field. There are two common types of military capital ships, offensive class and legion class. The armor strength is very high. Even the armor can directly resist the direct hit of the microsievert class light radiation cannon of Yuhui. How could it be sunk by the Reaper torpedo? Even if it was a battleship that was severely damaged, it wouldn't be the death torpedo that broke the camel's back, right? Moreover, Chen Ming remembered that this happened during an operation to suppress pirates. What kind of pirates could severely damage a battleship? Although the pirates who could make the army dispatch battleships to suppress them might be quite powerful, even so, it wouldn't be possible for a battleship to be sunk by pirates, right? Chen Ming didn't have enough knowledge and understanding of battleships at the time, so he just listened to the story. Anyway, the death torpedo was quite useful at that time, and it just saved his life when Yuhui invaded. But now looking back, it's strange. However, Chen Ming temporarily ignored the question of how the death torpedo sank the battleship. Let's look at the situation of the little madman mentioned by the boss first. Chen Ming thought about it, and the little madman should not be the one who died on the battleship, but the one who sank the battleship. The boss could move to such a remote place, which must be because of a conflict with some powerful forces in the Empire. Combined with what we just said, the answer is obvious. Chen Ming asked, "So, that little madman is a pirate? And he also had a conflict with the army somewhere?" "Yes," the boss answered concisely. Chen Ming asked again, "And he is also a psychic, otherwise it is impossible for the Reaper torpedo to sink the battleship?" "That's right, his psychic effect is very aggressive. Any damage caused directly or indirectly by him can be amplified by his psychic power and the specific degree of amplification. You can see that the Reaper torpedo can sink the battleship." So he had a conflict with the army at the beginning, and finally the army's battleship was sunk, and he also died in that battle? That's about it. A few simple questions made Chen Ming roughly understand what happened. The last person cultivated by the boss, the man called the Little Madman, was a pirate or became a pirate for some reason. He is not the leader of the pirates, but at least he is an important figure. One day, a large-scale conflict broke out, and the pirates were eventually surrounded and suppressed, but a mothership of the local army was sunk by a death torpedo that was amplified by psychic power. The matter of the psychic could not be told. So the army could only swallow this loss and tell the matter of a psychic as if it were the matter of ordinary pirates, which led to a shocking scandal. Although in the eyes of those who knew that psychics existed, this was just a normal loss when psychics were suppressed. But because the noise was too loud, the news could not be completely suppressed. In the end, in the eyes of ordinary people who learned part of the situation, the army was simply a waste. In a big way, this matter was that the army's main battleship was sunk. This was not only the face of the Starfield army whose main battleship was sunk, but also the face of the army everywhere. The person who caused this situation happened to be cultivated by the boss. Whether it was the contradiction that led to the scandal of the army, or the contradiction that the little madman died because of the army. In short, it is impossible for the boss to continue to stay in the prosperous Starfield. This also explains why when Chen Ming first met the boss had no intersection with the local army and had no intention of having any intersection. Instead, he got a little closer to the 14th Legion, which had only been rebuilt for more than 10 years. Although this was due to the relationship between Chen Ming and Bai Quan, it was definitely due to the conflict decades ago. As a level 6 psychic, the Empire certainly could not implicate the boss because of the trouble caused by the people he trained, but the Empire's own army's emotions could not be ignored, so it can only be said that Chen Ming has experienced a lot of things, and of course he can understand why the boss came here. After explaining the past to Chen Ming, the boss seemed a little nervous. After all, the effect of the things Chen Ming brought back was there, and no matter who used it, they would have the same emotions. The boss quickly sorted out his emotions, stretched out his hand, and pressed on Chen Ming's shoulder, and said solemnly, "I have to go out in the next few days, and I will tell you the result as soon as possible." "Thank you." A few minutes later, Chen Ming left the boss. After finishing these extra things, it was time to start his real work. Chen Ming planned for himself a little bit, dividing the things to be done into two parts, internal and external. The external part, which is what he had just thought of, is the manufacture of a new battleship. Of course, Chen Ming must first figure out the feasibility of this research project. It is not the feasibility that Chen Ming knows himself, but the reasonable feasibility that he must make others believe when he goes to work with others. The problem should not be big. The semi-biological and semi-mechanized technology he has mastered has been put into preliminary use. As long as the technology is shared and a little experiment is conducted, it can be determined that the technology he has mastered is completely fine. Chen Ming does not mind sharing his technology, and technology itself can only progress through sharing. He does not know when his own research will be completed, and sharing it out and asking others for help is obviously more efficient. And the reason why sharing is called sharing is that others will also share the technology that Chen Ming does not have. Chen Ming will definitely not lose. Of course, Chen Ming will also let in Whooping intervene in this matter, so that he can explain why he has mastered certain biological technologies. It can also help Chen Ming explain why he deliberately took a lot of biotechnology information from the Empire some time ago. And Whoopie existence can also help Chen Ming say some things that he is not easy to say. As for the biotechnology and some ship design technology that Whoopie mastered, Chen Ming can also explain it by saying that he personally taught Whoopie Zerg to master shipbuilding technology. In short, as long as Chen Ming's acting skills are good enough, Whoopie's joining will only be beneficial. And he believes that when he puts the corpse of the phase behemoth leader in front of the people he wants to invite, even if his idea is not feasible, someone will try every means to make his idea feasible. However, Chen Ming feels that he needs to consider another problem. That is, the development direction of military ship technology is basically biased towards frontal combat. So when designing ships, the frontal armor, frontal firepower, and coordination with other ships on the frontal battlefield of the military ships are all relatively important points when designing spacecraft. Not to mention the 14th Corps. The 14th Corps has several different ships that have been specially modified, even the main battleships. These ships transformed by the 14th Legion often have larger hulls, thicker armor, and more powerful frontal firepower than ordinary models. Chen Ming even knew that some of the phase ships that the Legion had developed had space for military armor. This made Chen Ming a little worried that if he only communicated with the Legion to design his ship, he would be led astray. The final designed ship would deviate from his idea. The main battleship he wanted must not be in the direction of the military. Although he would find the Ship Research Institute and the Psychic Research Institute at that time, and by the way, find the Biological Research Institute to cooperate in research and development. By the way, he would also find related departments, but he could not guarantee whether the other several research institutes would have the same habit. So Chen Ming felt that he had better find some other people, not from the Legion or the military, to participate in his project. But he cooperated with the Legion and had to borrow the Legion's facilities, resources, and information. It was a bit unreasonable to find other people. This gave him a headache. But Chen Ming thought about it carefully again. Suddenly, he had a new idea. That is, he can make use of his Extraordinary Research Institute a little bit. Although the Extraordinary Research Institute is affiliated with the 14th Legion and is currently labeled with several research labels of psychic energy, mechanical race, and special devices. But this does not mean that his institute can only cooperate with the Legion's Research Institute, or can only research these things. He can completely invite other research departments to cooperate in research and jointly develop a new project in the name of his research institute. This should be the most appropriate approach. Although Chen Ming is the only one who can participate in this project in the entire Extraordinary Research Institute. After all, the researchers in his research institute were not recruited to study spacecraft. But anyway, he just wants a reason, which is not impossible. In this way, he can also invite more other people to participate. For example, Shinda Company. Since the last time the chairman came to attend Chen Ming's engagement party and the relationship with Chen Ming eased, Chen Ming believed that the Research Institute on the Shinda Company should be very willing to invest resources and participate in Chen Ming's new research project. Although Shinda Company does not have phase technology and there are more mass-produced ships, it is a more commercial research institute. But Chen Ming still likes the ships of Shinda Company, which are very handy to use. In addition, although Shinda Company does not master the technology of phase ships, it has mastered the technology of battleships and can also participate in the design of battleships in this regard. You must know that Chen Ming has not yet completely mastered the technology of battleships. It is definitely the right idea to find more different people to brainstorm. Anyway, there is the corpse of the phase behemoth patriarch there, and the semi-biological and semi-mechanized technology that Chen Ming is willing to give out, so there should be no problem in finding people to cooperate. Tachyon Technology, or even the Vanchao Research Institute, may be able to shake some people over. And the process of developing this battleship may last for several months or even years. Anyway, Chen Ming is not in a hurry. After he finished fighting with the mechanical race, he had nothing important to do. He had plenty of time to study and build this special phase battleship himself. As for others, although the war between the Empire and the mechanical race has essentially ended, the war process will continue. During the war, No matter which force it is, there is a great desire to research weapons for war. Even if the final research results are Chen Ming's, the technology developed in the middle is real. For those who have been in the research institute for many years, this time should not be a big deal. The design of the new battleship is an external matter in Chen Ming's plan. As for the internal matter, Chen Ming has finally determined the limit of his own ability. Of course, Chen Ming means that after his triple power fusion, he can see that limit, not that he has reached the limit. And this limit also refers to the limit of ability, not the limit of strength. So, Chen Ming thinks it's time. It's time to start systematically learning knowledge related to psychic energy. Chen Ming has always been following the wild growth path of the psychic society, relying on his own understanding and a very small but critical amount of guidance to become stronger. This allows him to fully exert his own talents and potential, and also makes his understanding of some systematic knowledge may be somewhat biased. Some details of psychic power or knowledge unrelated to his own psychic power and some more messy psychic knowledge will basically have errors and omissions. Therefore, when the psychic's ability is developed to the limit, or when he can see his own limit like Chen Ming now, it is very necessary to carry out systematic learning. As long as these problems are corrected through systematic learning, it is equivalent to making up for all the shortcomings of Chen Ming's own psychic power. Moreover, the knowledge of psychic power is not just what Chen Ming himself has come into contact with. It should also take quite a while to learn. Therefore, Chen Ming felt that it was time for him to converge and be quiet for a while. He needed to study formally and learn serious psychic knowledge. So Chen Ming sent a message directly to the president, asking if the president had any way to give him a teacher or something. The president replied quickly, saying that it was not necessary. He directly sent a bunch of information to Chen Ming and asked Chen Ming to learn it himself. If he wanted to find a teacher, let's not talk about who would come and who would dare to be Chen Ming's teacher. The teacher's teaching efficiency might not even be as high as Chen Ming's self-study efficiency. Anyway, think about the difference between Chen Ming before and now, and you will know what level Chen Ming's learning ability is at. Only ask when you really don't understand, no matter whether it is the president or the boss. In the end, no one can be Chen Ming's teacher. Then Chen Ming has no objection. Self-study and learning from others are nothing more than whether you can master some additional experience while learning. Just like when he learned command technology from Bai Quan, he would always bring some of Bai Quan's command style when commanding in the end. Of course, this is not a bad thing. Although Bai Quan has a lieutenant general godfather, he has indeed fought all the way from the grassroots to the level of lieutenant general. There is nothing wrong with learning some of Bai Quan's command technology and style. Moreover, Chen Ming basically doesn't use these technologies when he is really fighting. Most of the time, he relies on absolute military force to crush them. Command? What is that? At most, he can make some tactics in the overall situation. There is no such thing as command in the actual battle. However, this kind of thing is not so good when it comes to psychic power. The president is not mainly worried that Chen Ming will be influenced by the teacher when learning psychic power. Instead, he is worried that the teacher will be influenced by Chen Ming when teaching Chen Ming. In short, let Chen Ming learn it slowly by himself. Anyway, he not only has to learn psychic power, but also has to learn battleship technology, various warships, the construction and use technology of megastructures, various biotechnology, etc. This is not a big deal. Chen Ming did not feel that there was any problem. After getting all the information, he did what he should do. He first spent 2 days preparing some resources that were attractive enough to lure different departments to participate in the idea he proposed. Then, he went to find Bai Quan. Bai Quan stayed in the distributed command center, as usual. He temporarily took over the work of Chiu Bowen, who had gone somewhere in the past 2 days. When Chen Ming saw him, he found that his face was a little uneasy. Chen Ming didn't think much about it and sat down next to him and asked, "What's wrong? Isn't the situation good recently?" After Chen Ming crushed all the main forces of the mechanical race, the war between the Empire and the mechanical race was really one-sided. The Empire and the mechanical race are in a simple mode. An Empire cannot lose against a star field. Add to that Chen Ming's troubles. It would be strange if the mechanical race could win. Chen Ming has also seen a lot of good news in the past 2 days, including where to win, where to achieve results, who to get results, and which psychics have made achievements in the war. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like it can make Bai Quan show this expression. Bai Quan explained, the front line is indeed overall good, but it's mainly the problem behind. Corruption occurred on the home front, which led to the failure of the war here. Bai Quan pointed on the screen in front of him and told Chen Ming the location where the battle was lost. It can only be said that the empire has never been monolithic. Of course, there are dark places where there is light. It is too common for people to do things secretly and make war profits. But what does this have to do with Chen Ming? There is no need for him to worry about this all the time. The empire will handle the empire's affairs on its own. If it is handled well, the empire can still have a second life. If it is not handled well, the empire will be buried with the machine clan. Of course, there are some things that Chen Ming still wants to ask out of curiosity. Does the empire have any thoughts on the news I announced yesterday? He is still quite curious about what decisions the empire will make in the face of natural disasters. I heard that they take it very seriously and are ready to start doing something big. The empire can have no newborns for 20 years, but it cannot have no newborns for 200 years. It must find a way to avoid the sequelae of the dimensional infection. Didn't you happen to point out a way before? That phase space. Phase space will only cause the spacecraft's radiant energy to be unable to be dissipated. Others basically have no impact, so Chen Ming's Zerg warships can attack the machines in phase space at will. Therefore, it is feasible to consider ways to move the empire to phase space. Phase space can actively affect the normal universe, and things in the normal universe can also be used normally, but existence in the normal universe cannot see the phase space. Others have no effect. In fact, Chen Ming also thought about stuffing the Zerg into the phase space and expanding from the phase space. But Chen Ming always felt something wasn't right if he did this. Part of the dimensional power he controlled made him a little repelled by such an approach, so he didn't do it in the end. Of course, if the Empire does this, Chen Ming will not stop it. After all, this is the only way to prevent the sequelae of dimensional infection. Chen Ming nodded with understanding and said, "Let's stop chatting. I'm here to talk to you about something." "What's up?" "My extraordinary institute wants to apply for a project to cooperate with external organizations." Bai Quan's serious expression just now suddenly collapsed. "Don't apply for this kind of thing with nothing to do. If you just do it, it will be over. Doesn't this involve the outside world and other research institutes in the Legion? I'm worried about being rejected." "Why did Legion refuse?" Bai Quan asked back. "I know how important the body of the giant phase beast clan leader is. Do you think anyone will refuse? And when you are working on a project, you will always come up with some new technologies and various new things, right? No one will refuse. If you have anything to say to Legion, you also know that there are many people who are trying to curry favor with you now, and it's too late. If you have any requests, just ask them, and any Legion that can do it will help you do it." "Oh, then I'll just tell you." "No, I'll give you a phone number, and you can find someone to discuss it yourself." "Okay." 2 days later, Chen Ming has already contacted most of the organizations and people he wants to invite, and also rented an additional laboratory here at the Legion headquarters. Started preparations before the project started. And just today, it seemed that the boss, who had been away from the hardware store for a few days, finally got news and asked Chen Ming to come over. There was nothing to say to Chen Ming, so he just passed by. Entering the hardware store, Chen Ming saw the resurrection mechanical fluid he gave him on the table in front of his boss. It must have failed to use. But the boss's face was not one of disappointment, but a smile. Chen Ming said hello and asked, "How is the situation?" "It's very good. When resurrected, this device will first prompt the resurrected person's genome and appearance after resurrection. The body I found was not that of a lunatic." Chen Ming was stunned for a moment and asked cautiously, Is it possible?" "Well, not." The boss directly denied it. "If there is no body of the little lunatic in the place I found, then he must still be alive. Everyone thought he was dead, but he wasn't dead yet, at least not at that time, but I don't know where he is now. Just take this back." Although the use of the resurrection mechanical fluid failed, it can be regarded as settling the boss's worries. Chen Ming put away the resurrection mechanical fluid, chatted with the boss for a few words, and then left. So far, He really had almost everything taken care of. You can really devote yourself to the long process of research and learning. Time flies. After finishing his boss's worry, half a year has passed in a blink of an eye. Everything went according to plan during this half year. Chen Ming successfully learned the ship technology, biotechnology, combat command technology, and various psychic knowledge. The research progress of the ongoing project to transform the corpse of the phase beast patriarch is also very gratifying. The research team established by Chen Ming spent more than a month to thoroughly figure out the condition of the phase beast corpse and had a sufficient understanding of the phase beast species. And in the next 3 weeks, the processing of the phase beast patriarch corpse was completed. Useless organs and tissues, such as the special digestive system used to digest scarlet substances and supply energy to the beast, or the brain that had long been dead and slightly damaged, were completely removed. They were distributed according to the contributions made by different research institutes in the early research process. These things are of great value to research in other directions. Useful organs and tissues, such as muscles, bones, and various organs that maintain the life of the phase beast itself, have regained some vitality under the effect of the Zerg's ability, so that they will not completely rot. Although under normal circumstances, the phase beast only exists in the phase space, and there are no natural microorganisms in the phase space. But for the needs of research, the body of the phase beast patriarch needs to be intermittently brought back to the normal universe. So naturally, some microorganisms that may cause the body to rot will also be sent into the phase space. The entire research site of the phase beast patriarch experiment is isolated from the outside, so there is no need to worry about some microorganisms that can only be processed from the phase space, causing trouble to the outside. However, things inside must still be handled well. Anti-corrosion is obviously the first priority, and some more important special organs on the patriarch's body, such as the long whiskers on the top of the head and the tail, and the lines on the body surface that emit light when the beast uses power. Because these organs and tissues are judged to be the important source of power of the phase beast during this period of research. And after the death of the patriarch, these organs of power are gradually losing power. Therefore, these special organs and tissues were specially preserved after being studied by the Psionic Research Institute, using the catalyst produced by the Zerg and the catalytic core that Chen Ming had studied almost some time ago, as well as the psychic power of a psychic. And in subsequent tests, it was confirmed that these operations have ensured the integrity of the dimensional power of the corpse. Ensure that the phase power of the corpse can still be used later. As for the scarlet power of the patriarch, it has been erased by the power of the phase space after its death and no longer exists. The impact of this is not great. Anyway, Chen Ming will find a way to add some of the power he should have to the ship in the end. At present, the progress of the main battleship project has just completed the treatment of the patriarch's corpse. The next step of the research direction of the basic construction of the ship has just begun. At present, the general direction of these designs has been prepared. The main control system is the component that the ship needs to consider first. It is the basis for controlling all the structures of the spacecraft, especially for the main battleship whose own scale has reached a certain level. It is even more important. The computing power of the main control is one of the most important indicators considered by the main control system. Compared with computers, the advantages of biological brains are extremely obvious here. So the purely mechanized main control structure was not within Chen Ming's consideration at the beginning. However, since Chen Ming found that the brain of the patriarch's corpse was damaged in the earliest stage, it was probably damaged after entering the Scarlet Dimension. As a result, the biological brain must be manufactured later. Whether it is relying on the existing technology of the Empire to manufacture biological brains or using the Queen to manufacture biological brains, and conducting subsequent tests, it will take Chen Ming some time. It happened that during this period of time, some new changes occurred in the sample number 0. One day, Chen Ming suddenly had a brain pull and put him in the mechanical colony to manage the personality core mechanical queen and merged with the sample number 0. The sample number 0 itself is a half-mechanical and half-biological existence. It not only has the characteristics of the individual Zerg, but also has various characteristics of the mechanical unit. Therefore, This time Chen Ming's sudden experiment was actually successful, allowing the sample number 0, which had already begun to show characteristics different from ordinary Zerg, and even different from the queen, to evolve. It became a new queen of insects, the queen of the mechanical clan, the real queen of machinery. It can control the power of the core of personality and help Chen Ming manage the mechanical clan in a more flexible and more human way, or in other words, the humanity that Chen Ming needs. Chen Ming thought it was not impossible to change to a computer controlled by the queen of machinery. But after considering another key issue, Chen Ming still chose the biological brain. The key issue is the signal transmission issue. Under the premise of having the main control, the next issue in the design of the battleship is the signal transmission line issue. This was also an important issue when the battleship technology was developed. And Chen Ming's ship was originally intended to use the mature line technology to build the signal line when it was first planned. But soon, with the study of the corpse of the phase behemoth patriarch, Chen Ming discovered that the phase behemoth's own nerve signal transmission efficiency is higher than all the currently known lines. In addition, Chen Ming himself has long solved the problem of converting pure electrical signals to bioelectric signals. So his main battleship can completely use these nerves as signal transmission lines. However, Chen Ming found a faster way to transmit signals. That is, the Zerg nerves strengthened by the Queen after absorbing the Patriarch's genes have a faster bioelectric signal transmission speed, enough to replace the Patriarch's nerves. It's just that the Patriarch's own nerves are absolutely the most suitable for his body, and using a little improvement in exchange for a decrease in adaptability may not be a suitable choice. At that time, almost all the researchers in Chen Ming's research institute quarreled over these two choices. In the end, Chen Ming decided to use the Zerg to solve the problem of nerves or signal lines. Under normal circumstances, Chen Ming would definitely be sprayed by those who support using the Patriarch's original nerves. But in the end, everyone agreed with Chen Ming's decision without any objection, because the Zerg can make the already fast signal transmission efficiency even higher than it can be. That is to use the hive mind. The existence of the hive mind can make the signal completely synchronized during transmission, without the need for the transmission process. It is precisely because of this situation of the Zerg. Even if the mechanical race merges the 0 sample with the mechanical queen and gives the mechanical race a real mechanical queen, it can also use the hive mind to eliminate the signal transmission process. But at present, neither the Empire nor Chen Ming has developed a signal line that can rival biological nerves. So in the case of an adaptive choice, the ship's main control system finally chose the Zerg brain, and the signal line also chose the nerves made by the Zerg queen. Although the signal transmission inside the ship can rely on the hive mind, some not-so-important places can still use the Zerg queen nerves. This is the current research and development progress of the main battleship. These alone have taken Chen Ming half a year. And then there are many problems such as energy sources, engines, armor, weapons, etc. waiting for him to deal with. Thinking about it makes Chen Ming a little headache and excited. To be honest, he hadn't felt any challenges in doing things for a while. This kind of research, where psychic power can only play a supporting role, is something that he can devote himself to and makes him feel that his life is extremely fulfilling. The research on the battleship will definitely take a long time. But Chen Ming is not only busy with the battleship. In addition to the progress on the ship, he has also made considerable progress in his own abilities. His power has been completely integrated, and he has been constantly gaining power from the Scarlet Dimension by contacting it during this period. In terms of power strength alone, his psychic power strength has more than doubled compared to before. But he looks less and less like a psychic, because he is more restrained in normal times and does not show any performance. He no longer needs to show his power in the Empire, and no one will provoke him. Except for some times when psychic power must be used, such as when his project needs to test some psychic technology that can be used on the battleship. Other times, other people can't even tell that he is a psychic. He is past the time when he needs to show his edge. He needs to settle down. In addition, since his prosthetic ability has been exposed, it doesn't matter to him whether he has a prosthesis or not. He no longer needs more prostheses to cover up anything. So he replaced all the prostheses, except in whooping, with robots. Only one body with a normal appearance that was made before and has been constantly changing during this period is left to act outside. Doing so can also weaken the impression that Chen Ming relied on in whooping to make a biological prosthesis. Eliminate the extremely small possibility that other people may associate in whooping with himself because of these prostheses. In addition, there are some other things happening in the past 6 months. Because the combat effectiveness of the mechanical race has collapsed completely, the Empire has been extremely successful in the war. Chen Ming has heard of many battle results that civilians talk about at different times and places, and things related to psychics are increasingly revealed in the perspective of ordinary people. With the preparations made by the Empire in the past, and the excitement brought to the people of the Empire by the current advantages of the Empire and the mechanical race in the war, the existence of psychics is really gradually integrating into the society of the Empire. There are negative situations as well. Some places are extremely disgusted with the existence of psychics and are quite unimpressed with the Empire's promotion of psychics. It may be the influence left over from some psychics committing crimes in the past or in history. But these are only a minority after all. Psychics will surely be able to truly appear in the public eye soon. There is also good news. Chen Ming's previous efforts to create the Black Mist Zerg were not in vain. After Chen Ming's extremely deliberate reminder, the Empire really found signs of Zhuge Jing's activities around some high-level officials in the territory. They began to pay attention to Zhuge Jing's existence again. Although the real brainwashed psychic has not yet been investigated, the resurgence of Zhuge Jing has been anticipated. Now is not the period when the entire Empire was stagnant before. The Empire will never allow Zhuge Jing to run out and cause trouble at a critical moment. Of course, there have been bad things in the past 6 months. These are the 2 natural disasters that Chen Ming mentioned that may come in the future. The situation of the mechanical race cannot be determined for the time being, but the space gap in the mechanical race star field is real. Although the gap leading to the 3 dimensions is already under the surveillance of the Empire, the gap may collapse at any time. Therefore, Chen Ming's current project related to the phase space of the phase beast is also a key project of the Empire. Even though the relationship between the Empire and him is a bit subtle at present, the Empire still gave Chen Ming the green light in all aspects. After all, other results brought about by this research process can also be applied to aspects related to dimensional gaps. In addition to funding Chen Ming's research, the Empire has indeed been working hard on this research, trying to carry out Baichuan's previous suggestion to Chen Ming, sending the entire Empire into the phase space to avoid the sequelae of the invasion of the Scarlet Dimension. However, Chen Ming still has the same indescribable strange feeling as before, which makes him somewhat reluctant to send the Zerg into the phase space to develop. There is nothing to say in detail. In addition, the Empire is also trying to send out enough reconnaissance fleets that may never return, trying to confirm the movements of the mechanical race outside. But this may be a project that takes longer than Chen Ming's project. In the past 6 months, there have been about these things that Chen Ming can remember. And today, Chen Ming just received a new piece of good news. That is, his pioneering fleet has made 6 more jumps in half a year, and the total number of jumps has reached 13 times. It can only be said that the efficiency of exploration and jumps has made a qualitative leap after the Zerg joined. The next jump, the 14th jump, which is enough to jump to the location set by Chen Ming 3 years ago, can start today, at this moment. Chen Ming directly returned to the pioneering fleet. He boarded the Supreme Point, which he had not returned to for a while because he was busy with the main battleship. Chaofan was also taken to the headquarters by Chen Ming because Chen Ming arranged the main battleship laboratory site at the headquarters. So only Hui Huang was waiting for him on the Supreme Point. Let's get started. Chen Ming didn't say much nonsense, came to the captain's room, and gave orders to Hui Huang. After receiving Chen Ming's order, Hui Huang sent the first batch of reconnaissance fleets to the destination of this jump. After getting the result that there was no danger in the jump landing, a small group of fleets carrying basic construction materials followed the Supreme Point, resonated with the engine of the Supreme Point, and began the formal jump. Of course, Neither this time nor the reconnaissance jump just now was a direct jump to the planet of Chen Ming's destination. Because Chen Ming originally obtained the coordinates of this location from the mechanical race. God knows whether there will be troubles from the mechanical race waiting for him at the destination. Even though the star map that Chen Ming got from the mechanical race showed that there were no mechanical races near this area, and the mechanical race might not be able to defeat him, he still needed to be prepared. Caution is the most important thing. Therefore, the destination of this jump was determined by Chen Ming to be a nearby galaxy that was some distance away from the real target and had not found any obvious problems in Chen Ming's astronomical optical observations. The jump ended quickly. The landing point of the jump was still some distance outside this nearby galaxy, and this was also done to ensure safety. After confirming again that there was no danger nearby, Chen Ming drove the supreme point towards the interior of the galaxy. After approaching the outermost planet of the galaxy, Chen Ming activated the galaxy-level sensor of the supreme point and scanned the galaxy. He did not find the existence of the mechanical race in the galaxy, but he found some interesting things. There were several moving objects in the galaxy, and there was an unknown space signal fluctuation far away outside the galaxy. The things in the galaxy are definitely not mechanical races according to Chen Ming's understanding of the mechanical race. And the space signal fluctuations outside the galaxy are in the direction of the galaxy where Chen Ming's real target for this jump is. Chen Ming did not rush to the next galaxy immediately, but first increased the power in this galaxy and scanned the specific situation of the objects moving in the galaxy. And the result of the scan. Those objects moving in the galaxy are all the combination of some kind of spacecraft and engineering equipment, which should be some kind of drones. Chen Ming even felt that these drones were quite familiar, because most of the equipment they were equipped with were mining-related equipment, but they were more advanced and more automated. They should be some kind of mining drones. From what Chen Ming scanned at this time, they seem to have been wandering inside the galaxy, mining minerals in the asteroid belt within the galaxy, and some exposed minerals on the surface of planets without high-risk environments. This should be a mineral mining machine left behind by the Shining Civilization, which is still operating today. Judging from the results of the planet scan just now, almost every planet has a large number of open-pit mineral resources, as well as a large number of traces of being mined by something. Apparently, these mining drones did this. And this galaxy is a galaxy that is extremely rich in mineral resources that have been mined by robots left over from the era of Shining Civilization and are still not completely mined today. Chen Ming immediately captured a mining drone, and after controlling it with psychic energy, he confirmed the place where these mining drones would return after collecting enough resources. It is also the location next door that Chen Ming decided on more than 3 years ago. Chen Ming no longer hesitated. Let the Supreme Point start the jump engine again and go to the galaxy named ZX. Generally speaking, only colonized galaxies will have unique names rather than code names, and the earliest colonists have the qualifications to name galaxies and planets. Of course, Chen Ming's naming of such a galaxy that is extremely far away from the Empire does not require the Empire's approval. So Chen Ming directly named this galaxy when he saw it. Origin Galaxy. The reason why Chen Ming named it directly was because at the moment the jump ended, a huge galaxy with 8 planets and 3 satellites appeared in his eyes. Although Chen Ming knew that this destination had multiple planets and satellites during previous observations. But it wasn't until he actually came here that he understood the specific conditions of these planets and their value. This is a perfect galaxy, starting close to the star and working from the inside out. They are 2 volcanic planets with a large amount of valuable mineral resources that can be seen from outside the planet. They can not only serve as military planets, but also use the high heat of the planet itself to become a specialized smelting planet. Outside, there are habitable planets with habitable satellites one after another. The value of such habitable double galaxies is self-evident. Then there are 2 ordinary terrestrial planets. Although ordinary, that is relative to other planets. The 2 planets themselves also have a certain level of resources. Moreover, the 2 planets themselves are relatively large in size, and the planet itself is also a type of resource. Further out, there is a gas giant planet and an ice giant planet, which have extremely rich gas resources. The gas giant even has 2 moons. Both satellites are wrapped in a thick atmosphere, but the surprising results of the scans showed that the planet has many special pore-like structures. These 2 satellites can produce a lot of high-quality gaseous resources. The outermost one is an ice planet that looks equally ordinary, with nothing special about it. However, according to Chen Ming's scanning results at this time, there is an ecosystem on this planet. These creatures living in extreme cold have considerable research value. This is a perfect galaxy, a self-sufficient, perfect capital galaxy, according to the classification of galaxy levels that Chen Ming once learned about. This galaxy is definitely a Category 6 galaxy. But there is a very serious question before Chen Ming. That is, there is a wormhole in this galaxy until the orbit of the habitable binary galaxy corresponds to the stars, and it is still moving around the star like an ordinary planet. This should be considered a wonder galaxy. Brilliant replied. According to the standards of the human empire, yes. Wonderful galaxy. Chen Ming had known it before. It is defined as strange phenomena in the universe that cannot be explained by current technology, which are collectively referred to as wonders of the universe. Since its existence cannot be denied and the reason for its existence cannot be understood, it can only be called a spectacle. And wonder galaxies are galaxies where such wonders of the universe exist. There used to be a Harmony company that had some relationship with its boss. Their Plant Research Institute was located in a galaxy whose stars had no ultraviolet light. It was a galaxy of wonders. At first, Chen Ming felt that there was something wrong with the existence of such a thing, but when he thought carefully about it, he had never seen any psychic energy before, and a star without ultraviolet light was not unacceptable. The current wormhole that is cyclically moving around a star is obviously a wonder of the universe. There is a wormhole in the galaxy that Chen Ming chose. Whether it is a normal wormhole or a wormhole that moves around a star like now, it means that the galaxy that Chen Ming named Origin is connected to a galaxy in the universe. And the other galaxy behind such a special wormhole is likely to be an extremely special galaxy. Chen Ming decided not to approach the wormhole for the time being. Instead, he first looked at whether other planets had similar problems. The Supreme Point shut down all its non-essential devices and started the galaxy-level sensor at full power to conduct an ultra-high-power scan of the Origin galaxy. After the scan, Chen Ming did not find any problems with most of the planets in the galaxy. Only the orbits of the habitable planet and habitable satellite here have many spaceship wreckage. The wreckage of the mechanical race's spaceship. After confirming that there was no sign of any active activity in the area where the wreckage was gathered, the Supreme Point slowly approached. It was so close that Chen Ming could see the ship graveyard through the porthole with his naked eyes. This graveyard looks very strange because all the wreckage inside is incomplete. Of course, the wreckage should be incomplete, but the missing parts of these wreckages are surprisingly consistent. All the ships are missing their weapon systems and main control systems, 2 important components. All the ships seem to have been dug out by something. On this basis, there are other missing parts of the ships. So this is very strange. Under normal circumstances, if a ship is sunk, it is indeed possible to lose its weapon system and main control system, but it is obviously wrong that all the ships that sank here have lost these 2 parts. Chen Ming immediately sent several small boats to capture the wreckage of several ships and drag them to the vicinity of the highest point, and inspected these wreckages to find out what happened. However, whether it is the wreckage that Chen Ming dragged to the highest point or all the wreckage in this graveyard, none of them has a main control system left. There is no clue left on any wreckage that can help him figure out how these ships sank here. After all, the main control system was gone, along with any other storage units and any devices that could leave the necessary clues. Even if Chen Ming wanted to restore the contents recorded in some recording devices through repair psychic energy, he had to at least find the original devices. He couldn't use other materials to repair the lost storage units, and then restore the previous data from these things that were no different from newly manufactured and had never stored any content. There was no connection at all. He couldn't find any clues either. He had no idea how this ship graveyard was formed, nor did he know who the ships here had clashed with and ended up like this. Looking at the angles of the damaged ships here, Chen Ming even thought that this might be caused by the civil war of the mechanical race. And he suddenly remembered that there were some nanorobots used for defense in the ruins half a year ago, which had the logical program to destroy the mechanical race. Before, Chen Ming thought that the nanorobots were damaged after being stored for a long time. But look at the situation here. In the entire cemetery, he only saw the wreckage of the mechanical clan's ships. Only the mechanical clan's spacecraft was lost here, so it seems that there is indeed a possibility of civil war. I don't know what kind of high-temperature weapons the mechanical clan used, which caused many of the wreckage of the ships to show signs of melting. Even some of the wreckage of the main battleships that sank here are the same. Chen Ming drove the spaceship into the cemetery area and observed everything around him. He suddenly found that the position of some wreckage in this cemetery seemed wrong. It didn't seem to be pulled into this state by the gravity of the planet below and the satellite next to it. It seemed that some behemoth passed through this wreckage, causing the position of some spacecraft wreckage to change in an unexpected way. Chen Ming carefully analyzed the data of the trajectory of the ship wreckage he had just obtained, and found that this wreckage area seemed to have been disturbed by some kind of external force of a behemoth. That was a real behemoth, a behemoth larger than the wreckage of warships of various levels and even main battleships suspended in the orbit of the planet. The power possessed by such an existence must be very terrifying. However, Chen Ming did not feel scared or any other negative emotions. Instead, he wanted to find some clues on these wreckages. But no matter how Chen Ming searched, no matter how he asked the spacecraft to scan, he could not find any traces of external objects on these wreckages. He could only find traces left by the wreckage itself and some things on other ships. This can only prove that there was a close battle between these ships, but it cannot prove what kind of giant left such traces. This actually further illustrates the possibility of a civil war among the mechanical race. There is no way to determine what left such traces. It can only be said that there are always many unknown things in the universe, which makes it impossible for people to figure out the reason for their existence. Chen Ming has no fear of the unknown, only curiosity. However, curiosity alone is useless. Without clues, there is no way. Then Chen Ming could only temporarily put aside his curiosity about the wreckage of these spacecraft in orbit and go to the planet first to see if there would be any new clues on the planet. Chen Ming approached the atmosphere of the habitable planet below, and after passing through the atmosphere, he activated the sensor of the highest point again and scanned the planet. In the results of the scan, Chen Ming found that there were traces of a small number of buildings just below the wreckage area. The entire planet is basically covered with dense vegetation, and this building area is no exception. However, most of the buildings have collapsed due to the growth of vegetation. Only a large building complex that looks exactly the same in appearance is still standing there. Although many vegetation has climbed up the walls of these buildings, at least these buildings have not collapsed yet. After a simple and quick scan to confirm that there are no moving objects and dangers, Chen Ming let the highest point land nearby. He put on his armor, got off the ship, and approached the building complex alone. In front of a building at the edge, Chen Ming saw a series of simple, closed rolling shutter doors. He reached out and repaired the rusted rolling shutter door, then opened it. The light of the stars shone into the interior of the building. Chen Ming was able to see that the building was full of metal plates of the same style that filled the entire interior space of the building. These buildings are warehouses. Chen Ming pulled up the rolling shutter door and went to the building next door, repaired, and opened a rolling shutter door. It was the same inside, with the same specifications of metal plates piled up, but the material was another. He continued to walk into the interior of the building complex, randomly opened the doors of a few warehouses, and found that each closed warehouse was full of various metal materials. They were all neatly arranged metal plates of the same specifications, which looked very satisfying to the obsessive-compulsive disorder. And just as Chen Ming continued to open the doors of the warehouses one by one, an alarm suddenly sounded in the warehouse he opened. He immediately gave up the idea of entering the warehouse and prepared for trouble and battle. However, he waited outside for a few minutes, but still did not wait for any threats or the protection of this warehouse. His danger perception psychic power did not move at all. Chen Ming was a little confused. However, there was a reason for the current situation. That is, the defense system linked to the alarm had been damaged in the endless time. So Chen Ming temporarily put away his excessive vigilance and walked into the warehouse that had just sounded. Then, he couldn't help but exclaimed, "Turtle!" This warehouse was also filled with metal plates of the same specifications. But it was not just that. The materials of these metal plates were all special-grade metals. This was a warehouse full of special-grade materials. The value it possessed might even be higher than the value of the resources that Chen Ming's pioneering fleet had spent all the way here. At this moment, Chen Ming couldn't help but move his hands. But he was still not in a hurry to really do it. After all, he hadn't seen any existence that could take these resources away so far. And judging from the architectural style of these warehouses, they were definitely things left by the shining civilization. And Chen Ming felt that there were two possibilities for the source of these warehouse materials. One possibility is that these resources were prepared by the shining civilization a long time ago when it wanted to develop this area. With Chen Ming's understanding of the richness of the resources of the shining civilization, this is not impossible. Combined with the situation when Chen Ming obtained the coordinates of this galaxy. That is, Chen Ming obtained the coordinates of this location from a satellite left by a shining civilization on Raimo. It means that it is very likely that these resources are used in the development process of the planet and galaxy under Chen Ming's feet towards Raimo. Speaking of which, Chen Ming suddenly thought, the satellite he discovered at the time should also be regarded as the legacy of the shining civilization. Although it is damaged, if it is preserved to this day, he can try to repair the satellite. And since the satellite of the shining civilization has determined the coordinates of the signal, it means that the signal it sends is definitely not an ordinary signal, but a signal that can definitely exceed the speed of light. Otherwise, when the signal slowly arrives, the development of the shining civilization may have been carried out for hundreds or thousands of years. This shows that the technical content of the satellite is also very terrifying. This is a device that can be used at the border and outside the country. The Empire needs to rely on superluminal communication base stations for superluminal communication, but the satellite of the shining civilization does not have any similar hanging devices and relies on the satellite itself to transmit signals. So its value is definitely not low. However, Chen Ming dismantled the satellite and dismantled it into some basic materials. Now he should have taken those materials to the sky with the iron ore. So, Chen Ming shook his head and threw the past out of his mind. It is impossible that the shining civilization only left some things on Raimo. There must be better and more advanced things waiting for him to find in other places. As for the current situation, Chen Ming believes that there is another possible source of these materials in the warehouse of the shining civilization. It is inseparable from the mining drones he found that are still in operation. Those mining drones have mined resources for countless years, and there is an absolute reason and time to fill all these warehouses. The metal resources piled up in these warehouses may be all the exposed mineral resources mined in this galaxy and neighboring galaxies in these years. And this mining process is still continuing. Of course, the real situation may be both of Chen Ming's guesses. And the reason why he has such a speculation. Because when approaching the interior of these warehouse buildings, Chen Ming found that some warehouses are still in a relatively good state. Just like the warehouse that sounded the alarm after Chen Ming opened, it is one of the warehouses that are still well preserved. Some of the warehouse doors in these well-preserved warehouses even look like they are definitely not left over from ancient times. Not only are there no rust, but there are signs that they have been replaced and maintained recently. Only those warehouses that have been completely filled with space have rust. These signs are telling him that the warehouses here are maintained by something, and materials are constantly being filled into these warehouses. It's just that no one uses these materials after they are full. So after combining the automated mining robots he saw when he jumped to the next galaxy just now, he thought that these mining robots were maintaining these warehouses. There is just one question that Chen Ming is not sure about. That is, those automated mining robots are pure mining robots in terms of structure, without any smelting function. And he did not find any traces of smelting factories nearby. How did those ores turn into these smelted metal plates? He may need to continue investigating nearby. But these resources are real here. Chen Ming has just decided that even if there is a weird wormhole in the galaxy, he plans to start colonizing from here and regard this place as the first step in his development and construction of colonies. He can fully use these resources here. Anyway, the alarm just now did not seem to attract anything. Even if he took all the resources away, the shining civilization would not crawl out of the grave to trouble him. Wait, Chen Ming suddenly realized something else. If he had found a way to come here after confirming the coordinates, could he have directly used the resources here to start from scratch? Even at a very early stage, the empire could have grown independently? Considering the amount of these resources, it seems that such a possibility does exist. However, if Chen Ming had come here directly at the beginning, his final result might have been depression. His psychic power should not have been at the current level. It can only be said that the stronger he is, the more Chen Ming feels that he cannot get away from the concept of human beings. After a slight sigh, Chen Ming was ready to turn around and control the entire warehouse area in his palm. Then, based on the warehouse, build the initial base. However, Hui Wang suddenly reminded Chen Ming that a large-scale jump fluctuation suddenly appeared in space. And this jump fluctuation stopped quickly. Chen Ming immediately walked out of the warehouse and raised his head. He found that a huge light source like a star appeared in the sky. It seemed to be a searchlight with enough power to be used on a cosmic scale, and it was also like a huge shining eye, staring straight at the warehouse area from space, staring at him outside the warehouse. Chen Ming immediately felt something was wrong. This might be something that had just happened because he had opened the alarm of the warehouse that was storing all the special metal materials. He immediately switched his view to several warships in space. Then he discovered that it was not a huge light source or a searchlight that had jumped into the orbit of the planet. It was a giant mechanical body. It was a giant mechanical body that put together thousands of battleships and even more warships. It was roughly an irregular sphere with a large number of tail-shaped structures that were surrounded by gravity, magnetism, or some special means. It made it look like it was not heavy at all, but unusually flexible. It looked like a garbage mountain, but the garbage it carried was all things that were taken from various warships. Whether it was armor, weapons, engines, or some other structures, they could all be seen on this giant mechanical body. It didn't look like a kind thing. And on the front, the structure that Chen Ming thought was a searchlight that was emitting light was not really a searchlight on the mechanical body. That was actually a magnificent light from a furnace. At this moment, Chen Ming understood. This mechanical body was what he had seen on the track before, the thing that had knocked a track in the wreckage of the spacecraft. No wonder Chen Ming did not find any traces of foreign things. The wreckage of the spacecraft only had remnants left by other wreckages of spacecraft. Looking at this giant mechanical body formed by countless mechanical warships, there was certainly no other trace of foreign things in the ruins. And no wonder Chen Ming had noticed that some of the ship's structures had signs of melting. He thought it happened during the battle, and was still thinking about what kind of weapons could make some battleships suffer high-temperature attacks. He even suspected that it was the damage caused by the means used by the mechanical race to transport stellar matter. The result was actually like this. There was a huge furnace inside the mechanical body, and the high heat it emitted affected part of the wreckage. In addition, Chen Ming also noticed that around this giant mechanical body, a large number of mining robots used it as a platform to take off and land, store ore, and transport the smelted metal plates to the planet below. This mechanical body, which is hundreds or thousands of times larger than the battleship, is the furnace of the automatic mining robot. And it returned to this galaxy after receiving the alarm. But for some reason, it did not launch an attack directly. Instead, after observing in space for a while, it suddenly sent a signal to Chen Ming's cruiser. Chen Ming immediately tried several different ways to interpret the signal. Soon he found that it was a string of characters, written with the words of the Shining Civilization. Chen Ming had also learned some of the language and writing of the Shining Civilization in the past 6 months, so he was able to translate this sentence by himself. The translated content required Chen Ming to provide an identification code. Sure enough, this was something left behind by the Shining Civilization. Of course, Chen Ming did not have the authority, but he did not need such authority. This giant mechanical body is a mechanical creation, As long as it can be controlled, everything is fine. The metal liquid appeared in Chen Ming's palm in an instant. But before he took action, he suddenly hesitated. This thing, is it considered a battleship? Although this mechanical body looks very powerful, it seems that it would be a loss to be the first battleship. But this thing, which is not sure whether it is a robot or a spaceship, will not be very compatible with Chen Ming's own power. At least it will definitely not be as good as the battleship based on the corpse of the phase behemoth patriarch, and he studied and manufactured it bit by bit. And whether its actual combat effectiveness will be as high as the battleship that Chen Ming finally manufactured is also a huge question. Although size is linked to combat effectiveness, they are not equal. Moreover, the main body of this thing should be just some kind of mechanical device, just mounted with the wreckage parts of many spaceships and even battleships. Although it looks very imposing, the actual combat power. However, Chen Ming thought carefully, this mechanical body should not be considered a battleship. After all, the parts of the battleships on it are all mounted, so it should not be counted, right? It's okay. Chen Ming felt that he just needed to carefully sense it when he was following the control process, and stop the control process if there was a problem. It wouldn't really let him control the first battleship. However, despite this, Chen Ming still did not choose to directly control this giant mechanical body. This is not only because he considered the problem he just thought about, but there is another reason. He suddenly thought of something. In the database of the remains where he obtained the resurrection mechanical fluid, Chen Ming remembered that after he controlled the entire laboratory, he found a special identification code that could be recognized by all defense facilities and all research facilities in the laboratory. Although Chen Ming didn't know the meaning of this identification code, it might be effective if used in this place. So Chen Ming made preparations for both hands at this time. He sent the identification code and prepared the metal liquid to be sent to the giant mechanical body at any time. He was ready to take action if there was any problem. The giant mechanical body was quiet for a while and suddenly replied to Chen Ming with a message. The translated content was, "Authorization authentication has been passed." Really? Chen Ming was a little surprised, but after thinking about it, it was a laboratory that studied important things like resurrection mechanical fluid, and it was normal for this identification code to have the authority to control the mechanical body in front of him. Then, the giant mechanical body completely handed over its authority to Chen Ming. And Chen Ming also learned its name from here. Scavenger robot. The scavenger robot just handed over the control authority directly to Chen Ming. No one knew what the identification code was, and it actually had such a high authority. However, Chen Ming did not suffer any loss in this matter, so of course he accepted the scavenger with a smile. It also saved him from trying to test whether controlling the scavenger was considered controlling the main battleship. After controlling the scavenger, the first thing Chen Ming had to do was of course to let the scavenger robot perform a system self-check, and he confirmed the status of the scavenger based on the quality inspection data. And using the highest point, the scavenger was scanned. The first result to come out was of course the log file during the system self-check. Chen Ming took a look at the log and quickly asked the scavenger to stop the self-check, because he found that these log files had filled up the storage unit that controlled the personality core of the scavenger. In addition to the system files kept by the scavenger itself in the core storage unit, all external storage units were filled with the log files of the scavenger's periodic self-check. This means that Chen Ming can only read records from about 30,000 years ago at most. All the earlier log records have been overwritten. If there is another self-check, there will be more files overwritten. Chen Ming's repair can pull up the files that have turned to ash, but there is no way to retrieve the files that have been overwritten. Just like things affected by destruction cannot be repaired by psychic power. After all, this is repair, not time travel. After the scavenger stopped the self-check, Chen Ming quickly backed up a copy of the scavenger's log and then confirmed the situation in the log record. At the beginning, it's a pity that the log records 30,000 years ago are not the records that Chen Ming wants to see. It's not the record that the scavenger was created when the Shining Civilization still existed, nor is it the record that the scavenger unloaded the weapons and main control of countless warships and installed them on himself. Instead, it is some very boring periodic and almost unchanging running back and forth in the neighboring galaxies. constantly leaving a large number of mining robots to mine resources and recycle resources. Come to think of it, since the entire storage unit has been completely filled, the earliest part of the record will of course be overwritten first. Just seeing these extremely detailed records, whether text, images, or videos, Chen Ming still felt a little overwhelmed. These records, which can be called redundant, occupy a large amount of storage space of the scavenger, resulting in him having no way of knowing what happened earlier. But there is no way, don't expect to change it since it has already happened. Let's see if there is anything valuable in these records at hand. Chen Ming screened the contents of the records a little. Filter out the records of things that happened step by step in 30,000 years, and only look for those records with special circumstances. However, the most of them are just some records of ground creatures threatening mining drones and then being quickly resolved, and there is no valuable information at all. If you insist, there is. That is, the scavenger saves all the logs of planets in all nearby galaxies that have mined resources, and also records the location of resources that are deeply buried underground and cannot be mined by drones. These records are all saved in the core storage unit and have not been overwritten. After all, this should be considered the job of the scavenger. These data can save a lot of time for Chen Ming to investigate and locate resources later. And since the scavengers have been to those places, and the automatic mining drones have collected minerals without encountering any danger, then there must not be too many dangers on these planets. And if there are any, they must have been killed by the scavengers long ago. Even if there are really dangers that have not been discovered, they must be underground. And Chen Ming's main means of mining resources now is the Zerg. He actually hopes there will be some danger. After all, danger also means opportunity. Although it may not be a good opportunity. But for the Zerg, it should be an opportunity to eat. Chen Ming quickly read through the part of the 30,000-year record that is different from the daily record. It can only be said that these records are a little beyond his imagination. For 30,000 years, the scavenger robot has been wandering in an area centered on the origin galaxy, constantly sending out mining robots, constantly retrieving mining robots, and constantly transporting minerals to the habitable planet in the origin galaxy. It has been doing repetitive work all the time. Chen Ming felt so bored that he wanted to vomit when he saw it. I really don't know. Oh, by the way, although the personality core of the mechanical race is called the personality core, it actually has no real personality. Forget it, let it be. Chen Ming still failed to obtain any effective information from the log records of the scavenger. Fortunately, the scanning program of the scavenger by the Supreme Point has come to the end. It allows Chen Ming to learn more about the scavenger without controlling the scavenger. For example, the various levels on the scavenger's body that Chen Ming can see at this time, which is larger than the main battleship, and even includes the outer shell composed of things such as the weapons and armor of the main battleship, are really all real goods. And all, whether inside or outside, as long as the weapons installed by the scavenger are connected to the main control system to the scavenger's own main control. This means that all these modified weapons can be used, whether they are main-level weapons or any other ship weapons. Even after the outermost layer of armor and weapons are destroyed, the scavengers can actively shed the outer layer of ship, armor, and continue to attack with the inner layer of weapons. It can really cause damage at the main level. The real combat power should at least be able to face the concentrated fire of dozens of battleships at the same time and fight back. To deal with this scavenger, at least hundreds of battleships would be needed. This number is somewhat small compared to the thousands of battleships recycled by scavengers to form their own bodies. However, in Chen Ming's view, the combat effectiveness of several battleships has already undergone a qualitative change compared with a single battleship. And the difference between dozens of ships and several ships is also extremely huge. But the premise of this is quantity, and quantity represents dexterity. Although this scavenger has collected at least the weapon systems and main control systems of thousands of capital ships, its firepower is definitely not bad. But individually, especially a single scavenger of such a large size, it is hard to say how well it will perform in actual combat. Chen Ming's judgment was also relatively conservative. Perhaps the scavengers would perform better in actual combat. He just thinks in the wrong direction out of habit. In any case, The scavengers are the most powerful space combat unit at his disposal. But Chen Ming did not intend to use it in combat. The main reason is that there is no occasion that requires this level of combat power. The secondary reason is because the results just scanned by the Supreme Point are more than that. On the scavengers, in addition to the bodies pieced together from the wreckage of the spacecraft visible to the naked eye, there are countless cutting-edge nanorobots that are more efficient than the nanorobots carried by ordinary mechanical races. Judging from the models of various additional attachments stored in its core storage unit, these nanorobots are not the nanorobots that were originally equipped when the scavengers were created. Instead, they were nanorobots collected by scavengers from various warships, and they were continuously optimized and iterated over the past 30,000 years to create cutting-edge nanorobots. The existence of these nanorobots gives scavengers an efficient nanorepair system. At the same time, it also gave the scavengers some nanoweapons optimized by relying on these cutting-edge nanorobots and various spacecraft debris. Of course, it's just a weapon enhanced by nanorobots, not a nano-level weapon. In space, true nanoscale weapons do not have such good application prospects. However, main-level weapons enhanced by nanorobots are definitely stronger than normal main-level weapons. This is enough to further strengthen the combat effectiveness of the scavengers. But what these nanorobots are more suitable for is obviously another thing that exists in the body of the scavenger: nanoforge. This is an industrial core equipment and an integrated miniaturized nanorobot factory. But its size is only about 10 cubic meters. It is a special device similar to the purgatory core, synchrotron core, and catalytic core. At the same time, it is the reason why today's scavengers were born. The reason why it is called today's scavenger is because when Chen Ming scanned it, he found that there was something wrong with the structure of the scavenger. The real basic scavenger did not have such a huge body today. It was originally just a mining drone platform. It did not have a nanoforge at all, nor those thick armors, nor those countless weapons. The reason why this happened: it is absolutely inseparable from the nanoforge. The positioning of the nanoforge is that it can evolve from the initial piece of equipment into a huge factory that can cover the planet, transforming the planet into an industrial colony. It does not matter whether it is an ordinary industrial colony or a psychic industrial colony that mass-produces psychic devices. Of course, the latter requires psychers to control the nanoforge throughout the process, and it also absolutely requires a large amount of psychic materials to be accumulated. They could do it in the era when shining civilization still existed, but Chen Ming definitely couldn't do it now. Of course, it can't be done, but it doesn't prevent Chen Ming from figuring out the working principle of the nanoforge through the data stored in the scavenger core. And the reason why this nanoforge did not appear on the planet, but on the scavengers. Although this reason has no beginning or end, it is impossible to fully explain the matter. But Chen Ming's scan of the scavenger could at least let him know that the nanoforge appeared on the scavenger because it was damaged. As for how the nanoforge was damaged and how it got to the scavengers, Chen Ming had no idea. Anyway, he could tell directly from the scan results that the nanoforge was damaged and that the nanoforge was taken away by scavengers. I don't know how many years ago, the scavengers of the automated mining platform took away the damaged nanoforge and began to use the nanoforge to strengthen themselves. Ultimately, a monster is created. That is today's scavenger robot, an object that can gradually evolve a planet into an industrial colony if sufficient materials are provided. Even if it is damaged, its value will be far greater than that of a combat robot. Chen Ming must use the damaged nanoforge inside the scavenger to study and analyze the principles and perform actual operations. But Chen Ming does not have the time to do such a long-term task. The research process of the Empire's battleship has never stopped, but he took the time to use it on the 14th jump of the pioneering fleet. No matter how you say it, things have priorities, and studying the nanoforge is definitely not as important as setting up a real base as soon as possible. So Chen Ming's idea is to let the scavengers continue their previous work, go mining, and collect all the spacecraft wreckage in the galaxy for recycling. Anyway, the important parts of the wreckage in the orbit of this habitable planet have been picked up by the scavengers, and the materials consumed in repairing them are tantamount to building a new one. It's just that there is no need to spend a lot of basic resources to build the basic framework. But there is no need. Even if Chen Ming has a battleship now, he doesn't have a suitable object to control the battleship. At least he doesn't have it now. It's better to recycle resources and go to nearby galaxies to continue doing what he should do. Not only can the scavenger continue to work, but it can also temporarily serve as the guardian of the origin galaxy, until the colonies and military forces of the origin galaxy are sufficient. Until Chen Ming thoroughly confirms the status of the galaxy and allows the pioneering fleet waiting in the rear to come and start the real colonization stage. Chen Ming gave the scavenger a new order. However, the scavenger did not execute it directly, but responded to Chen Ming. The current galaxy has not obtained the permission to mine non-natural resources. The current galaxy, in the Guardian's response, is the name of the galaxy given by the Shining Civilization. Chen Ming modified it, by the way, and changed it to the name of the origin he gave. Of course, this is not the point. The point is that the scavenger's response made him think of a question. If the scavenger does not have the authority to mine resources, how did the scavenger install the things removed from the capital ships? Some restrictions can be ignored during wartime. War? Sure enough, the destruction of the Shining Civilization can be traced. However, the core storage unit of the scavenger does not store any information related to the war. Only information related to its essential work will be stored by it. This is really. Chen Ming sighed and was about to use the identification code to grant permissions to the scavenger. However, he suddenly noticed that the scavenger just mentioned non-natural resources, which means that the scavenger can mine natural resources. It's just that the scavenger didn't mine all the resources in the galaxy directly for some reason, and even the resources in the neighboring galaxies still exist in large quantities, which doesn't look like they have been mined for tens of thousands of years. He asked the scavenger again, and the answer given by the scavenger this time was longer. The general meaning is that what the Shining Civilization wants is balanced resource development. That is, after the scavengers have conducted a round of investigations in the nearby galaxies, they will plan according to the resource ratio of these galaxies and plan a set of balanced resource development routes. And this route is gradually expanding as the scavengers explore the surrounding galaxies. So in the process of expanding the area of resource mining, the average amount of resources mined in each place will of course be less. It can only be said that the scavengers are only developing some of the resources in space and on the surface of the planets in the early stage. The Shining Civilization needs to be able to make these places still have economic benefits after this initial period of time. This is also normal logic. After all, for a civilization, it is definitely better to choose the latter than to directly mine all the resources at once and rely on resources to create industries and rely on industries to transform into economic benefits. They are not like Chen Ming, who does not need to consider the consequences of mining all the resources at once. After Chen Ming's Zerg developed the resources of a planet, the planet itself has no value. Let alone the value of minerals. This planet is full of potholes inside and out, and there are problems with the geological structure. There is no value for colonization and development at all. So after the Zerg developed, Chen Ming usually let the Zerg eat up some of the developed planets directly, leaving no trace. It is a waste to keep it, so it is better to completely transform it into the energy of the Zerg. So the Shining Civilization must be planning to develop this area for a long time. But it may be because of the war for some reasons that the development process has been blocked, and it has not been officially launched until today. Only the scavengers were left here to repeat the orders left by the Shining Civilization. Chen Ming knew the reason why the Shining Civilization wanted to develop this place very well. So be it. Chen Ming used the identification code to open the permissions for the scavengers. Watching the mining drone carried by the scavengers unload all the resources, he followed the scavengers to the place where the debris was densely covered in orbit and began to recycle the resources on those ships. Chen Ming did not continue to pay too much attention to that place, but turned the ship at the highest point and went to every planetary satellite in the galaxy and scanned them all. Although he knew that the origin galaxy was the scavengers' hometown and it was unlikely that there would be anything dangerous, the process should still be followed. After confirming that there were no problems with the planetary satellites in the galaxy, Chen Ming locked his sights on the celestial body in the galaxy that corresponds to the location of the habitable planet, the wormhole. This must be the reason why the shining civilization wants to develop here, because Chen Ming saw from the records of the scavengers. This wormhole has appeared here at least 30,000 years ago. Under Chen Ming's control, the highest point gradually approached the location of the wormhole. He went to investigate what the wormhole was like. Several large devices were hanging on the highest point under his psychic power and gradually started under his control, locking the object of action to the wormhole in the galaxy. Half a year ago, after getting the Stargate, Chen Ming took the opportunity to learn a lot of knowledge related to stargates, singularities, and wormholes while learning the main battleship technology. Not to say that he has completely mastered it, at least he has learned a general idea, knows how to use some equipment, and knows how to investigate a wormhole. And just now, in addition to conducting a preliminary investigation and analysis of the scavengers, Chen Ming also gave himself time to dispatch equipment from the Empire. Although since Chen Ming started his research on the battleship, the Empire no longer cares how much he controls, nor how many devices are actually Chen Ming's. But Chen Ming is a man of cultivation and character. He controls things that are not his only for convenience, and will never embezzle them. He will even help repair the equipment. Therefore, when Chen Ming dispatches equipment, he needs to consider whether others are using it. He can't just take the equipment away without saying hello. The time he just spent dealing with the scavengers is also to give others time to complete the current experiment as soon as possible so that he can transfer the equipment. Several devices quickly ran smoothly and returned the various readings of the wormhole to Chen Ming. Chen Ming is most concerned about only two of the most important properties: coordinates and stability. There is nothing to say about coordinates. Natural wormholes appear in pairs in the universe, and there must be another wormhole that exists in an unknown corner of the universe connected to it. What kind of place is at the other end of the wormhole determines the value of this wormhole. Stability determines whether the wormhole is stable in space and whether it can maintain its existence for a long time. The volume and mass of objects that can pass through it, as well as the possibility of accidents when extracting singularities and other factors. It is an important indicator that integrates multiple data. However, Chen Ming found that the equipment failed to analyze the coordinates of another wormhole connected to this wormhole during the detection. This is normal. During the pioneering era, the Empire could not confirm what was at the other end of all wormholes by just scanning. If you want to know what is behind the wormhole, you still need to enter the wormhole directly and reach the other end of the wormhole to determine it. Although it is troublesome and dangerous, it is an absolutely stable means to find out what is at the other end of the wormhole. Fortunately, there is good news at the moment. That is, after the inspection, Chen Ming found that this wormhole that has existed for at least 30,000 years is unexpectedly stable. Or 30,000 years is nothing on the scale of the universe. Such a stable wormhole can accommodate objects of greater mass, which means that the journey after exploring the wormhole will be easier. High stability also means that it will not collapse at will. A collapsed wormhole may lead to the destruction of the entire galaxy. A stable wormhole can also make it easier for Chen Ming to install a special locking device on the wormhole. It is a technology that the Empire developed a long time ago and has been updating. Its function is to unilaterally block the other end of the wormhole from this process. Chen Ming did not investigate what happened to make the Empire create this thing, but it must not be a good thing. So Chen Ming has to install this locking device on the wormhole as soon as possible. Chen Ming had already prepared the wormhole locking device. After locking the precise coordinates of the wormhole and determining the fluctuation value of the surrounding space disturbance, he released the locking device. 6 devices with prismatic structures flew out from the highest point and flew to different locations near the wormhole in the distance. Connecting them together, they can just form a regular octahedron surrounding the wormhole. However, there was no fancy light or any new changes that could be confirmed by the naked eye. Only the signal received by the sensor can confirm that the locking device is operating normally. Chen Ming's expression was a little tense. Because this locking device will definitely have a considerable impact on the other side of the wormhole when it is activated, and it can definitely be detected. If there is something on the other side of the wormhole, it will definitely come to stop Chen Ming's behavior at this time. Suddenly, the space fluctuation data received by the sensor at the highest point was briefly disturbed. Just when Chen Ming's expression was extremely tense, and he was ready to take action at any time to prevent unknown dangers. The space fluctuations suddenly calmed down again, and no changes have occurred since then. In this way, the locking device completed a successful operation. Chen Ming's worries seemed unnecessary in the end. After confirming that the wormhole locking device was stable and temporarily blocking the unknown dangers that might exist behind the wormhole, he drove the high point back to the orbit of the habitable planet. Continue the main business he came to this galaxy to do, colonizing the planet. This time he was no longer going to build a temporary base, but to build a complete colony in the true sense. Before that, Chen Ming planned to name this habitable planet first. After he had named this galaxy Origin, this habitable planet should have been called Origin 3. The two volcanic planets inside were Origin 1 and Origin 2 according to their distance from the star. But this is a habitable planet after all, and the climate conditions are very suitable for human habitation, so Chen Ming still planned to give it a good name. After thinking about it, Chen Ming finally gave it an older but more classic name, Gaia. He did not think much about the habitable satellite of Gaia and directly named it Gaia 1. And the other planets in the galaxy were named after Origin 4 and Origin 5. He only wanted to name those planets with special value and special significance. On that planet Gaia, Chen Ming's first colony will be established. The requirements and needs of Chen Ming's colony are obviously different from those of ordinary colonies. There will be people, and people are needed in the colonies of the Empire, and they are all kinds of people. Therefore, if the Empire finds this place, it must first build government departments, administrative positions, and various colonial infrastructure. Then, with the government as the center, it will gradually expand a comprehensive colonial city. Finally, different specialized colonies will be expanded to the surrounding planets and galaxies, and resources will be supplied to the earliest comprehensive colony, which is the capital of a star region. But Chen Ming does not need to go through such a process. He has brilliance to manage administrative positions, and the entire government department can install the core of the afterglow. It is enough. He also doesn't need so many meaningless comprehensive facilities. Those things are used to create jobs. He just needs a colony that can meet his needs. To be specific and precise, he needs a scientific research center that can meet all his research needs, not a laboratory with important equipment that even needs to be rented. He wants a colony and planet that focuses on scientific research. This is what his first colony wants to achieve. After all, it is meaningless for one person to study alone, and communication is also the basis of progress. Therefore, there will definitely be more than just him in such a colony. There will also be other researchers. Each of these researchers will be invited or approved by Chen Ming himself. In simple terms, if there is a researcher that Chen Ming has heard of with technology, he will directly dig into the corner of the empire. Then he will call it exchange and learning. So the infrastructure that should be on the planet must be there. He just doesn't need too much infrastructure. Chen Ming can't just put a dry scientific research center and invite them, right? Then the supporting facilities and various modern entertainment facilities must keep up. The only difference is that the empire needs to consider the population explosion in the space age, so people need to come to these places to work. Chen Ming does not need to consider this issue. He can directly let the Yuhui Corps manage these things openly. He has been preparing for this for a long time, and he will realize his idea from today. The highest point soon returned to the sky above the planet Gaia. Chen Ming's psychic power acted on Gaia's orbit and sent the stargate that Chen Ming had taken from the mechanical family half a year ago and had undergone applicable transformation to the orbit. The stargate unfolded on the orbit and gradually fixed itself in a suitable position. The other stargate in Chen Ming's hand was located at the temporary base left by his pioneering fleet during the 7th jump. In the earliest times, starting with the 3rd jump of the pioneering fleet, every time Chen Ming jumps, he will demolish the stronghold of the earliest jump. Because he does not have enough resources to support it, nor does he have enough afterglow to manage so many strongholds. But starting from the 7th time, that is, the time when he was forced to jump because of the machine race. Chen Ming's situation is different. He is no longer limited by the resources of the stronghold. So starting from that jump, all temporary strongholds behind can be left behind. The Zerg that sailed with the pioneering fleet and began to expand outward from these temporary strongholds could gather all the valuable materials mined during their expansion into the strongholds. It goes without saying that the benefits of centralized management go without saying. Not only is it convenient for Chen Ming to directly use psychic energy. Moreover, when a situation arises that requires large-scale calls without relying on psychic energy, it is also easy to start the transfer. Like it is now. One of the two stargates was erected in the orbit of the planet Gaia, which Chen Ming was about to develop and needed a lot of resources. Another stargate was erected at the 7th Jump Stronghold, filled with resources mined by the Zerg. This is the plan laid out by Chen Ming. The stargate is fully expanded. The high-efficiency energy crystals transmitted together with the stargate are also converted into energy that supplies the stargate through the conversion device. The stargate is slowly starting up, opening a layer of mirror within the stargate frame. Without any interference from outside forces, the mirror surface quickly solidified completely. A Zerg battleship emerged from the mirror. What followed were more Zerg battleships of the same model. They are all Hercules B-class biological cargo ships that the Zerg have built in the past 6 months. It is the result of various improvements and modifications to the mechanical race mothership that was assimilated by the insect queen. Of course, Chen Ming still used spiritual energy to block his control of these Zerg battleships. It's not that Zerg warships can't work. The transportation and loading capabilities of the Hercules B-class are no worse than the Astra class, the capital ship class cargo ship that the Empire also has. Even the Hercules B-class can use the characteristics of the Zerg flesh to coordinate with the cargo structure of the port to transport cargo efficiently and create a special separate isolation layer according to the size of the cargo in the internal storage cavity to maximize the carrying capacity of the cargo quantity. And the Zerg can not only have one model of Hercules B-class, more than one cargo variant of the Hercules class, to be precise. Of course, Chen Ming would consider different uses when asking the Insect Queen to modify the capital ship. The combat effectiveness of the combat model Hercules A is definitely not bad among ships of the same class. The reason why Chen Ming did not directly control the Zerg battleship was to avoid taking the position of the first battleship he controlled. His choice was made, and these capital ships are only used to transport resources. Transportation supplies resources for subsequent operations of the Stargate and colonial construction. Chen Ming's plan is very clear. His psychic energy is only responsible for providing the first batch of initial energy, and is only used to supply the first activation of the Stargate. After that, the transportation of materials will be completely handed over to the Zerg and Stargate. He had said long ago that he wanted to create a colony that could continue to function without him. Now it seems that at least he has successfully taken the first step. At least with the arrival of this batch of Zerg main-class cargo ships, his colony will no longer have a problem with the material consumption of activating the Stargate. And when all the first batch of Zerg motherships entered the galaxy and began to transport supplies to the planet, the Stargate continued to operate. The Stargate will not be temporarily closed until all materials for the temporary base on the 7th are transported. And later when Chen Ming teleported the Stargate to Stronghold number 8 and restarted it. Until all the mountains of materials from all the pioneering bases are transported to Gaia. And at the same time, the subsequent pioneering fleet also jumped to the origin galaxy after the reconnaissance force ahead confirmed the safety of the galaxy. The resources are there, the labor force is there, and the command is already there. Chen Ming doesn't need to worry about the rest. He handed over the task to Brilliance and turned around to study a problem that he would have to face sooner or later. Wormhole. If the wormhole is objectively there, then Chen Ming cannot regard it as nothing. Sooner or later, he had to figure out what was behind the wormhole. That's not the break point. Let's start trying to explore the wormhole directly now. The Empire has the ability to seize the singularity at the core of the wormhole and use it to create it. Of course, it also has the technology to explore the wormhole. Of course, Chen Ming also mastered these when learning the technologies related to the Stargate. If you want to explore a wormhole, you have to go through it. This process requires confronting the power of wormholes to distort space. This force cannot be blocked by ordinary battleships. The spacecraft needs to be equipped with a space-stabilizing device similar to the single locking device he just used on the wormhole. As long as the force of natural wormholes that distort space can be stabilized, one can pass through the wormhole safely. Alternatively, it is not impossible to rely on the sheer strength of the ship itself. At least there have been examples of this being done successfully. When Chen Ming heard the news, he immediately guessed which ship had this capability. Obviously, it was the offensive class specially modified by the 14th Legion. The protective strength to resist the impact of the wormhole is not a problem. Of course, Chen Ming didn't really do this. Although he didn't prepare special things to deal with wormholes before, he had almost prepared from scratch during the time of dealing with scavengers and preparing resources for colony construction. Chen Ming had obtained the space stabilization device through channels within the Empire and installed it on 3 cruisers. One was the high point he drove, and 2 were the stardust he controlled. He wanted to personally go through the wormhole and go to the other end of the wormhole. There was no special reason, just wanting. In the past, Chen Ming was very afraid of death because he often missed a lot of interesting things. Now that he finally has the ability and is not afraid of death, of course he wants to personally experience many scenes that he couldn't experience before. For example now, the 3 cruisers soon arrived in front of the wormhole again. The locking device surrounding the wormhole is a one-way locking device, which does not affect the passage of this section of the wormhole. Although it would be a bit troublesome to go back through the wormhole, Chen Ming felt that he should not need to go through this wormhole to come back. He just needed this wormhole to help him go through. Chen Ming was mentally and physically prepared. He activated the space stabilization device and entered the spiral wormhole that was like a miniature nebula. The space force of the wormhole tore his spacecraft, but it was all offset by the space stabilization device, so that Chen Ming's body was not affected except for a little nausea. But think about it from another angle. If the power of the wormhole can make Chen Ming's body feel a little nauseous now, then it will be obvious what the effect will be for ordinary people. So in Chen Ming's impression, people who go through the wormhole to investigate what is behind the wormhole are generally hard-trained soldiers or scientists who have to investigate with such serious reactions. Chen Ming thought about it in his mind while waiting silently. And while waiting, Chen Ming's danger-sensing psychic power, which had been silent for a long time, finally started to move. He felt a danger that completely enveloped him and a sharp danger that appeared in his perception at the same time. He immediately perked up and looked at the readings returned from the highest point. He found that the coordinates of the wormhole landing point calculated by the computer of the spacecraft were shifting because of a strange gravitational force. Chen Ming didn't know what was going on, but he was ready to face the danger. And the moment the 3 spacecraft passed through the wormhole, a world that was so dark that it seemed that all the light was swallowed up appeared in Chen Ming's eyes. No, this is not a dark world. This is a black hole that appeared outside the wormhole. Appeared in front of Chen Ming. Black hole. The deepest, darkest, and most mysterious thing in the universe. Of course, in this era, the mystery of black holes needs to be questioned. Because the Empire's research on black holes has long been no longer limited to theory. Instead, it has started to practice. Relying on the superluminal navigation technology of spacecraft developed in the early years, the Empire's research on black holes has long been feasible, and there have always been people conducting research in this area. Chen Ming has met a lot in the past 6 months. It's just that under normal circumstances, studying black holes is something that professionals do, and ordinary civilian ships can't do superluminal navigation. They can only do close to the speed of light. Only some special ships can do real superluminal navigation, which is more troublesome. Therefore, the knowledge of black holes themselves is obviously not enough among the people and those who are not related to this research. Just like Chen Ming has never encountered the existence of any black hole along the way, so his understanding of black holes is not detailed. Moreover, with the discovery of hyperspace and FTL navigation, hyperspace channel technology has essentially replaced FTL navigation technology. Whether in terms of practicality, popularity, or safety, Hyperspace channel technology is better than FTL navigation technology. But this does not mean that this technology has been completely eliminated, nor does it mean that Chen Ming will miss this important technology in the history of ship development when learning ship technology. The key to the existence of this technology is the study of black holes. In the special occasion of studying black holes, only FTL navigation technology is a technology that must be mastered. Otherwise, let alone investigating black holes, if you accidentally fall into the event horizon of the black hole while running near the black hole, that is, within the range where even light cannot escape, it can almost be said that universal means can escape from it, not even hyperspace. Because there are not only hyperspace channel clouds in hyperspace, there are also gravity wells formed by massive celestial bodies. The hyperspace channel engine itself also uses gravity wells to enter and exit hyperspace. The concept of a black hole as a whole can be said to be the most massive celestial body in the universe. Its gravity well in hyperspace will be particularly obvious and huge. Therefore, when the spacecraft falls into the event horizon of the black hole, in the hyperspace position corresponding to the spacecraft, it has already entered the area affected by the depth of the black hole's gravity well. As long as it enters hyperspace, it will be destroyed by gravity faster than in the normal universe. If you want to come out alive after entering the black hole's event horizon, either use superluminal navigation technology or use jump technology. Jump engines are only equipped on ships above the cruiser level, and after the jump engine is used, it damages the basic structure, which will cause subtle damage to the basic structure that is almost impossible to detect with the naked eye. It is very troublesome to repair this kind of damage with normal repair methods, and the maintenance cost is extremely high. And with the high material consumption, the cost is even higher. Chen Ming uses jump all day long as if it's free because he has psychic power. His psychic power can easily repair this kind of damage. He can repair the jump engine of the spacecraft at a very low cost and very fast speed. But in the past, there was no such good conditions as Chen Ming. So the superluminal navigation technology was preserved as a technology that must be used under specific conditions. Although Chen Ming's spacecraft did not carry a superluminal navigation system, his situation was fine when he passed through the wormhole and arrived in front of the black hole. He was just affected by the gravity of the black hole and had not been pulled into the event horizon of the black hole. And the sense of danger that he felt before passing through the wormhole, which could completely cover him, just came from this black hole. This shows that this danger is visible, and generally speaking, it is unlikely to pose an effective threat to him. It's just that after he really passed through the wormhole, the sharp sense of danger he felt on the way through disappeared. It is unclear whether the danger actually comes from the process of passing through the wormhole, or whether the source that could cause danger has left after he passed through the wormhole or something else. But it is not a bad thing that there is no danger now, right? Chen Ming looked back at the wormhole behind the highest point. It is not in a special galaxy like the wormhole in the origin galaxy, but a wormhole on the trajectory of movement around the black hole. Although it looks okay at present, it can be seen without calculation that gravity is still attracting the wormhole closer to the black hole. Sooner or later, the wormhole will fall into the black hole. Chen Ming does not know what will happen if the wormhole falls into the black hole, and he does not want to know. But he knows how to extract the singularity in the wormhole. If there are irreversible consequences, he will definitely solve the problem before the consequences appear. Of course, the premise is to ensure the safety of the surrounding area first. The black hole itself should not be dangerous, as long as you don't commit suicide. So what Chen Ming has to deal with is the safety of the surrounding area. When doing things in an unknown place, the first thing to consider is of course safety. He first needed to find out if there were any galaxies or celestial bodies nearby that he could use to settle down, and confirm whether he was in the star field observable by the Empire or in a truly unknown star field. Then he turned back to consider the wormhole itself. Chen Ming controlled the spaceship to turn around and accelerate to temporarily leave the area, but at the moment when the engines of the three spaceships began to accelerate, the sharp sense of danger that had disappeared before suddenly stabbed him again. Chen Ming immediately controlled the battleship to make a maneuver, but a purple-black beam shot out from the black hole behind, still swept across a Stardust-class ship, that had no time to open its shield. And the place on the Stardust-class ship that was swept by this beam seemed to be gripped by some kind of terrifying pressure and was directly twisted into a circle of steel twists. Most of the systems of the spaceship were also damaged under this heavy pressure. Even if the beam disappeared, Chen Ming still felt a psychic force entangled in the damaged area of the Stardust, continuing to exert huge pressure on the interior of the ship. It was gradually crushing the collapsed Stardust class into a ball of metal. The beam that can escape the black hole is definitely not a normal beam. It should be a projection of some kind of psychic power. There is something in the black hole's event horizon that casts its power. This familiar scene made him seem to see the day when he and Yin Xiong had a conflict, and Yin Xiong used his psychic power to control metal to twist his iron ore into a metal ball. Chen Ming felt a string in his consciousness tighten. He decisively controlled the high point and the remaining Stardust class to make a short distance jump and pull enough distance from the black hole behind. Then he immediately turned the bow, and all the sensors were activated at full power, trying to find out what was in the black hole's horizon. However, Chen Ming's ship did not prepare special equipment for investigating the black hole area. Although the sensors at the high point are top-notch, they are not suitable for the current situation. Fortunately, the existence in the black hole did not continue to release the beam outside the black hole. And the sense of danger in Chen Ming's perception has gradually disappeared, as if it was just a warning Chen Ming not to get too close to the black hole. But Chen Ming's face was no longer expressionless at this time. He just labeled the things in the black hole as doomed in his mind. Whether it is to pave the way for the fleet to arrive here later, or to kill the danger at the earliest time, or simply for revenge, he must enter the horizon of the black hole, and he must completely solve the things in the black hole. Chen Ming took another look at the deep black hole and drove the Supreme Point and Stardust to temporarily leave this area. At the same time, he picked up the terminal and found the address book list of some people with some status and ability in scientific research that he had met in the past 6 months. After flipping through it, he found the phone number of the director of a research institute that studies celestial bodies and focuses on black holes. After spending a few minutes to successfully borrow the appropriate equipment, and spending a few more minutes to bring the equipment under his control, Chen Ming installed these black hole exploration equipment on the remaining 2 ships. However, Chen Ming could not get the best equipment that could directly penetrate the horizon for reconnaissance for the time being, and even if he got it, he would need time and a special place to install it. It doesn't mean that you can just find a ship and use it directly. So Chen Ming needs to pass through the horizon of the black hole to conduct reconnaissance next. But this just meets his needs. He wanted to see what was targeting him in the event horizon and then kill it. The only remaining Stardust-class robot was assigned a robot controlled by Chen Ming himself, and it began to turn around and approach the event horizon of the black hole. Soon, from the robot's perspective, Chen Ming once again sensed a growing sense of danger. And at the moment when the robot sensed that the sense of danger reached its peak, he started the jump engine and forcibly jumped into the event horizon of the black hole. And this jump just happened to avoid a purple-black beam shot out of the black hole. In the event horizon of the black hole, Chen Ming could only see countless distorted lights with his visual sensors, as if a colorful black made it impossible for people to distinguish the internal situation through vision. But after Chen Ming prepared special equipment, the event horizon of the black hole was no longer a cage that swallowed everything. He could use these devices to intuitively detect the situation in the event horizon of the black hole. But he was suddenly stunned when he looked at the data sent back. Because in addition to detecting the black hole itself, the sensor also detected something about the size of a scavenger, a living thing. Right in the center of the black hole, there was something like a dark maggot struggling to crawl out of the black hole. But it seemed to be confined in the black hole and could not completely escape the control of the black hole no matter what. The head of this maggot-like thing was not round, but very sharp, and a huge mouth opened at the tip, full of curled sharp teeth. On both sides of its half-body that had stuck out of the black hole, there were long and sharp limbs like arthropods. These limbs were twitching and struggling frantically, but they could not change the current situation of this thing being trapped in the black hole, and could only make it look more frantic. From these characteristics, It seemed that it was not a substantial creature, but a manifestation of the existence of other dimensions after entering the normal universe. Because its curled teeth have no ability to chew and tear prey, and there is no meaning for its existence, as if it is a pure embodiment of malice. And its lack of eyes does not prevent it from observing the universe and attacking anything close to the galaxy. And its actions are obviously trying to leave the world behind the black hole and truly enter the normal universe. It's like the Scarlet Dimension. I didn't expect that guess to be true, Chen Ming muttered to himself. His meaning is also very clear, referring to the question that the Empire has been discussing in astronomy about whether there is really a new dimension behind the black hole. A long time ago, with the development of hyperspace technology, wormholes, and Stargate technology, the Empire has always discussed what kind of things exist behind black holes. And the most discussed, of course, is a new dimension. And with the mastery of superluminal technology, the Empire's investigation of black holes has been advancing. But the exploration of the world behind black holes has been stagnant. There are many reasons for this. Not only can hyperspace technology not be applied to the investigation of black holes, but also the dimensional infection caused by the Scarlet Dimension makes it difficult not to doubt whether there will be any equally bad problems in the black hole dimension. Moreover, the huge gravitational force of a massive celestial body like a black hole itself has an immeasurable impact on ships. So far, all experiments to explore the world behind black holes have ended in failure. Exploring the dimension behind a black hole is difficult. But the guess has not changed. That is, there is a high probability that there is a dimension or plane similar to hyperspace behind the black hole. Of course, from now on, the existing dimension will definitely be more similar to the phase space and the Scarlet Dimension. No matter what it looks like, the dimension behind the black hole is very far away from the normal universe, and it is much more difficult to pass through the black hole than to any known and discovered dimension. The dimension behind the black hole is not like the phase space and the Scarlet Dimension, which have long been in contact with the normal universe. What's more, Chen Ming has now personally seen the scene where the big black maggot failed to pass through the black hole. Although it was stuck on the black hole, it did not seem to affect its influence on the normal universe by the part that had already drilled out. It could already use that powerful force near the black hole to easily destroy the cruiser. Even from the situation of Chen Ming's Stardust class being pressed into a high-density metal ball by the psychic power. Even the armor and hull strength of the main battleship may not be able to directly resist the direct damage from it. The shield may have some blocking effect, but unless it is really tried, no one can say whether it can be blocked. However, he can test this problem now. After the Stardust class jumped and dodged according to Chen Ming's command to avoid the deep purple beam and entered the black hole's horizon, the sensor captured the appearance of the monster. The monster suddenly seemed to be crazy, and its limbs waved more crazily. At the same time, the crack full of curved fangs opened almost 180 degrees in the direction of the Stardust class. A purple-black ball of light was gradually forming in the center of the crack. When the energy of the light ball was condensed to the extreme, a purple-black energy beam burst out and once again shot at the Stardust that entered the field of view. Chen Ming immediately made the Stardust class perform a short-distance jump again, and once again dodged the gravity psychic energy beam shot by the monster. But this energy beam did not dissipate directly, but continued to approach the Stardust under the swing of the monster's head. The second Stardust was about to be destroyed again. However, Chen Ming's psychic energy was suddenly stimulated at this moment. With the help of the Scarlet Power, the Stardust class was forcibly moved several kilometers, and once again dodged the beam. At the same time, the short-distance charging of the Stardust jump engine was completed, and when the monster shook its maggot-like head and threw the purple-black beam again, the Stardust jumped again and hid away. And this time, the jump allowed the Stardust to successfully approach the core of the black hole and stick to the monster's madly waving limbs. Countless meteor fighters were released by Stardust, flying into the abyss like countless red meteors. In a blink of an eye, all these meteors went out. The meteor fighter was too small, and its armor was too weak. The moment it got close enough to the black hole, it was destroyed by a gravitational force on the dark monster that was stronger than the black hole next to it. and the superposition of the two gravitational forces was still destroying the structure of the Stardust-class ship. But Chen Ming had no intention of retreating. In order to prevent this Stardust-class ship from following the footsteps of the previous Stardust-class ship, he chose to increase the investment in Stardust's maintenance psychic energy, constantly supporting Stardust to continue to approach the black hole and the monster stuck in the black hole. He wanted to see what this guy was, whether it was a spirit or some powerful creature. Stardust passed through the flailing limbs. The only tachyon spear carried on the hull was also trying to launch an attack. However, those once turbulent torrents of particles lost their former sharpness when facing this monster. The gravity psychic energy around this monster that can disintegrate everything dispersed all the particles fired by the tachyon spear. His cruiser seemed unable to cause any effective damage to this monster. Come to think of it, the combat power estimated by the scavenger Chen Ming could face about 100 battleships at the same time. And the combat power of the psychic monster in front of him that passed through the black hole would definitely not be bad. It was really a bit too much to think that just a cruiser could cause real damage to it. But Chen Ming's purpose was not to cause damage to it. His purpose was always to use the current opportunity to investigate more information about this dark monster. The dark monster seemed to have discovered that the spaceship controlled by Chen Ming had an extremely exaggerated flexibility and no longer tried to use it. Instead, it lowered its head, probably the thing on the head, and opened its bloody mouth of terrifying size, trying to eat the Stardust directly. Stardust immediately moved towards the lower abdomen of the dark monster, which was the part where it was stuck in the black hole. The data in this place may have some special value. But suddenly, Chen Ming found that there seemed to be something wrong in the data transmitted back by the black hole sensor. He immediately changed the original course of the Stardust and took some risks to approach the place where the sensor found something wrong. As the distance shortened, the black hole sensor finally captured a clearer piece of data. What made Chen Ming feel wrong was a limb of the black maggot monster that was drooping on the side of the body, as if it was dead. And the wreckage of a spacecraft of a model that Chen Ming had never seen before was pierced into the root of this limb. In a place so close to the black hole, Chen Ming's Stardust was even about to disintegrate itself, and it was only barely supported by Chen Ming's psychic energy for continuous repairs. And this spacecraft that pierced into the body of the black monster did not have any damage torn by gravity. There were only signs of damage over time. This situation made Chen Ming think of only one possibility. This is something left behind by the Shining Civilization. The Shining Civilization originally intended to develop the Origin Galaxy, and the wormhole in the Origin Galaxy would certainly be part of the development. Even the existence of this wormhole was the reason why the Shining Civilization developed here. Then, of course, there would be a spaceship belonging to the Shining Civilization coming here, passing through the wormhole and clashing with the monsters in the black hole for some reasons that Chen Ming did not know. Finally, they were left here. Chen Ming suddenly felt jealous. Because the design model of that spaceship was something that Chen Ming had never understood after studying ship technology for so long. He had never heard of any spaceship that could withstand the pull of the gravity of a black hole for 30,000 years and survive as early as now. That spaceship must have technology far beyond his technical level, waiting for him to obtain it. And just as Chen Ming discovered this spaceship, the Stardust class was also caught by the dark monster in the gap on the moving route because Chen Ming forcibly changed the direction of travel in the middle of the journey. Just once, the Stardust was torn in half by the dark monster. Chen Ming's eyes in the black hole's horizon were also cut off. The Stardust class was destroyed, but Chen Ming had already obtained enough valuable information. He already had enough reasons to kill this monster, and now there is one more. He must find a way to get the ship that is suspected to be from the Shining Civilization. Chen Ming was determined to change his plan. The black hole was there, and its threat was not immediate, so he did not want to deal with the trouble of the black hole at first. But if there is such an unknown thing in the black hole that even the question mark of whether it is a living thing must be answered, it must first solve this disgusting thing.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.